Göbekli Tepe. The site sits on a barren hilltop in southeastern Turkey. Stone pillars rise from the earth, arranged in circular patterns. Each pillar stands 3 to 6 meters tall, weighing up to 20 tons. They are carved from solid limestone, shaped into T-forms with flat tops. The surfaces bear intricate reliefs. Animals emerge from the stone: foxes, lions, scorpions, vultures, snakes. Human arms extend along the pillar sides, hands meeting at what would be a waist. These are not simple markers. They are monuments requiring planning, organisation, and thousands of hours of labour. The site dates to approximately 9,600 years before the Common Era. This places its construction in the pre-pottery Neolithic period. The people who built Göbekli Tepe had not yet developed agriculture. They were hunter-gatherers, living in small mobile groups, following animal herds and seasonal plant resources. According to conventional understanding, such societies should not have possessed the social organisation or motivation to undertake monumental construction. Complex architecture was supposed to follow agriculture, not precede it. Cities came after farms. Temples came after settlements. Göbekli Tepe reverses this sequence. The circles are buried deliberately. After a period of use, the builders filled the spaces between pillars with debris and rubble, then constructed new circles on top. This pattern repeats through multiple layers. Each generation built new monuments, then buried them, creating a tell, an artificial hill composed of successive construction phases. Why would people invest enormous effort in creating sacred spaces only to deliberately conceal them? No evidence of permanent habitation exists at the site. No houses, no domestic structures, no signs of daily life. The area was used exclusively for whatever purposes these circles served. People came from elsewhere, perhaps travelling considerable distances to participate in ceremonies or rituals. The animal carvings might represent totems, deities, or symbolic representations of clans and groups gathering at the site. The construction methods remain unclear. The limestone blocks were quarried from bedrock using stone tools. No metal existed in this period. Workers must have employed flint and other hard stones to cut, shape, and smooth the pillars. Moving 20-ton blocks without wheeled vehicles, without draft animals, without any technology beyond human muscle and simple levers required sophisticated understanding of physics and engineering. Hundreds of people working together over extended periods could accomplish the task, but organising such labour among hunter-gatherer groups challenges assumptions about social complexity in the Neolithic. Some archaeologists propose that Göbekli Tepe's construction actually drove agricultural development. The need to support large gatherings of people at the site might have created pressure to develop more reliable food sources. Instead of agriculture enabling temple building necessitated agriculture. This inverts the traditional narrative of civilization's emergence, placing religious or social motivations before economic ones. The site's purpose remains speculative. Was it a temple, a gathering place for rituals, an astronomical observatory, a burial ground? Human remains are scarce, though some skeletal fragments suggest mortuary practices. The animal imagery might relate to beliefs about death, transformation, or the relationship between humans and nature. The deliberate burial of circles could represent ritual closure, marking the end of a phase of use, or encoding cycles of renewal and regeneration. Göbekli Tepe forces reconsideration of human social evolution. Complex societies capable of monumental construction existed far earlier than previously believed. The motivations driving human cooperation and social organization may be more varied than simple material necessity. Religious belief, communal identity, and symbolic expression might have been as important as food production in shaping early civilization. The site stands as testament to sophisticated cultural practices among people living 11,000 years ago, challenging every assumption about what hunter-gatherers could or could not achieve. Karahan Tepe, 35 kilometers from Göbekli Tepe, another hilltop site emerges from excavation. Karahan Tepe shares architectural features with its more famous neighbour. T-shaped pillars carved from bedrock rise from the ground. Circular and rectangular structures contain stone benches and carved figures. The site dates to a similar period, perhaps slightly later, around 9,400 years before the Common Era. Like Göbekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe challenges understanding of Neolithic societies. What distinguishes Karahan Tepe is its underground chambers. Rather than building structures above ground, the inhabitants carved rooms directly into bedrock. Subterranean spaces were hollowed out, walls smoothed, floors levelled. Pillars were not erected, but carved from the surrounding stone, left attached to the bedrock below. This represents even greater labour investment than Göbekli Tepe's construction. Removing rock to create negative space required removing all material that was not part of the structure. The effort was immense. One chamber contains a striking feature. A stone panel carved in high relief depicts a human figure holding what appears to be a phallus. The figure is surrounded by animals, including leopards. The explicit nature of the carving suggests ritualistic or symbolic significance related to fertility, sexuality, or power. Such imagery appears across many ancient cultures, but finding it in a structure this old, created by hunter-gatherers, again disrupts conventional timelines of symbolic representation and religious thought. Another carved panel shows a group of human figures. They appear to be holding hands or engaged in some collective action. This representation of group identity or communal activity suggests sophisticated social organization. The people who created Karahan Tepe thought of themselves as members of a community engaged in shared purpose. The energy invested in creating permanent monuments to this collective identity indicates its importance to their worldview. The relationship between Karahan Tepe and Göbekli Tepe is unclear. Were they contemporary, serving related but distinct functions? Did one precede the other, representing evolution of architectural and religious practices? Were they part of a broader network of ritual sites spanning the region? Surveys have identified similar structures at other locations, suggesting a widespread cultural phenomenon rather than isolated developments. The underground nature of Karahan Tepe's main structures raises additional questions. Why carve chambers into bedrock rather than building above ground? Was there symbolic significance to being underground, perhaps related to burial, rebirth, or connection to underworld deities? Did the enclosed spaces create specific acoustic properties used in rituals? Underground chambers offer temperature stability and protection from elements, but these practical advantages seem insufficient to explain the enormous labour investment. Like Göbekli Tepe, Karahan Tepe shows no evidence of permanent habitation. It was a destination, not a settlement. People came, conducted whatever activities the site facilitated, then departed. This pattern of specialised sacred sites separated from daily living spaces appears unprecedented in this time period. The implications for understanding Neolithic social organisation are profound. Both sites were deliberately buried and abandoned. Whether this resulted from religious imperatives, environmental changes, or social transformations remains unknown. The deliberate nature of the burial, carefully filling spaces with stones and soil rather than simply abandoning structures to natural decay, suggests ritual closure. These places held such importance that their decommissioning required ceremonial treatment. Stonehenge. The massive stones stand in a circle on Salisbury Plain in southern England. Each sarsen stone weighs approximately 25 tons. They are dressed, shaped with surprising precision for stones worked only with stone hammers. Horizontal lintels connect the uprights, held in place by mortise and tenon joints. The inner horseshoe arrangement consists of even larger trilithons, pairs of uprights supporting a lintel. Within this arrangement stand smaller bluestones, transported from Wales, over 240 kilometres away. Construction occurred in multiple phases spanning approximately 1,500 years. The earliest activity dates to around 3,000 years before the Common Era, when a circular ditch and bank were created. The iconic stone circle was erected around 2500 BCE. Later modifications and rearrangements continued for centuries, This multi-generational project required sustained cultural continuity and shared vision across dozens of generations. The transportation of bluestones from the Preseli Hills in Wales to Salisbury Plain represents an engineering achievement of staggering proportions. Each bluestone weighs 2 to 5 tons. Moving them overland required either dragging on sledges or transporting by water. The sea route would involve coastal sailing and river navigation. The land route required crossing rugged terrain. Either method demanded enormous labour. Why transport these specific stones such distances when local stone was available? The bluestones must have held special significance. Perhaps they were believed to possess healing properties, magical power, or spiritual importance derived from their origin location. The effort to obtain them indicates they were not interchangeable with other materials. Their inclusion in the monument was essential to its purpose, whatever that purpose was. Astronomical alignments are evident. The entrance avenue aligns with the midsummer sunrise and midwinter sunset. On the summer solstice, the sun rises directly over the heel stone, casting its light into the monument's centre. This precision could not be accidental. The builders incorporated celestial observations into the structure's design. Whether Stonehenge functioned as an observatory, a calendar, or a place where astronomical events held religious significance remains debated. Human remains buried at the site span the monument's entire period of use. Cremated bones deposited in the earliest phases suggest Stonehenge served as a burial ground for elite individuals. The concentration of burials from a limited segment of the population indicates social stratification. Only certain people, perhaps religious leaders, chiefs, or members of specific families, merited burial at this sacred location. Recent discoveries reveal even greater complexity. A massive circular arrangement of timber posts, known as woodhenge, stood nearby. Other henges, burial mounds, and ritual structures dot the landscape, creating a ceremonial complex spanning several square kilometres. Stonehenge was not isolated, but part of an extensive sacred geography. Processions likely moved between sites following prescribed routes during seasonal festivals or life cycle ceremonies. The construction methods remain partially mysterious. How were 25-ton stones raised upright and lintels lifted to top them? Experiments with replica stones demonstrate feasibility using large labour forces, wooden A-frames, ropes, and earthen ramps. 100 people working together could accomplish the task, but coordination, planning, and sustained effort over years would be required. This implies centralised authority capable of mobilising and directing labour on a massive scale. Acoustic properties of the stone circle are notable. Sound behaves unusually within the space. Voices carry in unexpected ways. Music played inside the circle creates reverberations and echoes. Whether these acoustic effects were intentional design features or happy accidents is unknown. If intentional, it suggests sophisticated understanding of sound propagation and its manipulation for ritual purposes. Stonehenge ceased active use around 1600 BCE. The monument was not destroyed, but gradually abandoned. Cultural changes, shifts in religious practice, or population movements might explain its decommissioning. The stones remained standing, eventually becoming objects of wonder and speculation for subsequent cultures who had no memory of their original purpose. Medieval folklore attributed Stonehenge to supernatural forces, claiming giants or wizards erected the stones. Only with scientific archaeology did understanding of the monument's true age and human construction emerge. Yet even now, fundamental questions persist. What rituals occurred within the stone circle? What beliefs motivated its construction? How did the society that built Stonehenge organise itself socially, politically, and religiously? The stones stand mute, their secrets largely intact. Baalbek. In the Bekaa Valley of modern Lebanon, colossal stone blocks form the foundation of a Roman temple complex, the Temple of Jupiter. Baal stands atop a massive platform constructed from limestone blocks of extraordinary size. 3 stones in the western retaining wall, known as the Trilithon, each weigh approximately 800 tons. They measure 90 metres long and 4 metres wide. A 4th stone, partially quarried and left in place nearby, weighs an estimated 1,600 tons, making it one of the largest worked stones in the world. The Roman temple complex dates to the 1st century of the Common Era. However, the massive foundation blocks predate Roman construction. Exactly when these megaliths were cut and positioned remains uncertain. They rest on bedrock as part of a podium that elevates the temple platform. The precision of their placement is remarkable. Stones fit together so tightly that a knife blade cannot be inserted between them. No mortar binds them. Their massive weight and precise cutting hold them in place. Moving 800-ton stones challenges modern engineering. Contemporary quarrying and transportation of stones approaching this size require specialized equipment, massive cranes, heavy transport vehicles, hydraulic systems. How ancient builders accomplished the same task with Bronze Age or Iron Age technology is unexplained. Even if thousands of workers pulled the blocks on sledges using ropes, the friction and weight would seem insurmountable. The path from quarry to construction site is slightly uphill, complicating movement further. Some researchers propose that the stones were never moved at all. Instead, the quarry might have been closer to the site than currently believed, or the blocks were carved in place and the surrounding stone removed. This hypothesis reduces the transportation challenge but does not eliminate the mystery of how stones were lifted and positioned with such precision. Fitting blocks weighing hundreds of tons together with minimal gaps requires extraordinary control over their placement. The purpose of using such massive stones is unclear. Smaller blocks would have served structural purposes equally well. The choice to quarry, transport, and position stones of record-breaking size suggests motivations beyond practical necessity. Perhaps the scale demonstrated power, religious devotion, or technical capability. Monumental architecture often serves symbolic functions, communicating messages about the society that created it. Local tradition attributes Baalbek's foundation to pre-Roman, even pre-Phoenician builders. Some legends claim giants constructed the platform. While such tales cannot be taken literally, they might preserve cultural memory of the site's extreme antiquity. If the megaliths significantly predate Roman construction, identifying the culture responsible becomes difficult. No inscriptions, no distinctive artifacts, nothing definitively connects the foundation to any known civilization. The Roman builders incorporated the existing platform into their temple design. They recognized the site's significance and built upon the earlier foundation. This pattern appears elsewhere. Sacred sites often remain sacred across multiple cultures and millennia. The Romans may have chosen Baalbek precisely because earlier peoples had already sanctified the location. Quarrying techniques for the megaliths show skilled stoneworking. The blocks are rectangular with smooth surfaces and sharp edges. This level of precision required deliberate effort. Workers must have used bronze or iron tools to cut channels around the stone, inserting wedges to split it from bedrock. Final shaping and smoothing followed. The process was time-consuming and labour-intensive, but feasible with available technology. The mystery lies not in cutting the stones, but in moving and positioning them. Earthquakes have damaged Baalbek repeatedly over millennia. Despite this seismic activity, the megalithic foundation blocks remain essentially in place. Their massive weight provides stability that smaller stones could not match. This seismic resistance may have been intentional. Builders in earthquake-prone regions developed techniques to create stable structures. Perhaps the choice of enormous foundation stones reflected sophisticated understanding of earthquake engineering. Modern visitors to Baalbek confront the same question that has puzzled observers for centuries. How were these stones moved and positioned? The technical capabilities required seem to exceed what ancient societies should have possessed, yet the stones are there, precisely fitted, bearing the weight of subsequent construction for thousands of years. The evidence demands explanation, but satisfactory explanations remain elusive. The Great Pyramid of Giza. The pyramid rises from the desert at Giza on the western bank of the Nile near modern Cairo. Its base covers 13 acres. The structure originally stood 146 meters tall, though loss of the capstone has reduced its height by approximately 9 meters. It consists of approximately 2.3 million limestone blocks, each weighing 2 to 15 tons. The total mass approaches 6 million tons. This is the Great Pyramid, tomb of Pharaoh Khufu, built around 2,560 years before the Common Era. The precision of its construction is extraordinary. The base is level within 21 millimeters across its entire expanse. The four sides align with cardinal directions within 3/60ths of a degree. This accuracy, achieved without magnetic compasses, demonstrates sophisticated astronomical knowledge and surveying techniques. The blocks fit together with gaps averaging just half a millimeter. Modern construction rarely achieves such precision. How was it built? The standard explanation involves ramps, sledges, and enormous labour forces. Workers quarried limestone blocks using copper tools and stone hammers. Blocks were transported on wooden sledges pulled by teams of men. Recent experiments showed that wetting the sand ahead of the sledge reduces friction significantly, allowing smaller crews to move heavy loads. Blocks were then raised to their positions using ramps. The ramp theory faces challenges. A straight ramp reaching the pyramid's top would need to be over 1.5 kilometers long to maintain a manageable slope. The volume of material required for such a ramp would exceed the pyramid's own volume. A spiral ramp wrapping around the pyramid might work, but no archaeological evidence confirms this. Internal ramps have been proposed, but their existence remains speculative. Alternative theories suggest combinations of ramps, levers, and counterweight systems, but certainty eludes us. The construction timeline seems impossibly short. Ancient sources claim the pyramid took 20 years to build. If accurate, workers placed approximately 300 blocks per day, every day, for 2 decades. Each block required quarrying, transporting, and positioning with precision. The logistics boggle the mind. Housing, feeding, and organising the workforce alone constitutes a massive undertaking. Estimates of workforce size range from tens of thousands to over 100,000 workers. Recent discoveries suggest a more complex picture. Workers were not slaves but paid labourers. Graffiti left by work gangs bears their names, suggesting pride in their contribution. Evidence of large-scale bakeries and breweries indicates organised provisioning. Medical care was provided. Workers who died received proper burial. This was a national project mobilising Egypt's resources, not the forced labour of an oppressed population. The pyramid's internal structure adds to the mystery. 3 main chambers exist inside. The subterranean chamber, carved into bedrock beneath the pyramid, remains unfinished. The Queen's chamber sits within the pyramid's body. The King's chamber, where Khufu's sarcophagus rests, lies near the centre at significant height. Granite beams weighing 50 to 80 tons form the chamber's ceiling. How these were positioned deep within the structure during construction is unclear. Above the King's chamber, 5 relieving chambers separate the weight of stone above from the burial chamber itself. This sophisticated engineering prevented the chamber's collapse under enormous pressure. The relieving chambers show that Egyptian architects understood structural forces and designed solutions to manage them. This knowledge appears advanced for the 3rd millennium BCE. Air shafts extend from both the King's and Queen's chambers towards the pyramid's exterior. Their purpose is debated. Were they to allow the pharaoh's spirit to ascend to the stars? Practical ventilation for workers during construction? Symbolic connections to celestial realms? The shafts do not reach the surface directly, bending and turning through the stone, which complicates functional explanations. Mathematical properties of the pyramid's dimensions have sparked endless speculation. Ratios between height, base length, and angles, approximate pi, and the golden ratio. Whether these mathematical relationships are intentional or coincidental remains controversial. The ancient Egyptians had sophisticated mathematical knowledge, but whether they encoded specific constants into the pyramid's design is unproven. Alternative theories about the pyramid's construction proliferate. Some claim advanced lost technologies, others invoke extraterrestrial assistance. These explanations are unnecessary. While the pyramid's construction challenges modern understanding, attributing it to unknown super technologies or aliens dismisses ancient Egyptian ingenuity. The Egyptians possessed knowledge, skills, and organizational capabilities sufficient for the task. That we don't fully understand their methods does not mean they lacked methods. The pyramid's purpose seems clear. Khufu's tomb, designed to preserve his body and facilitate his journey to the afterlife. Yet questions persist. Why this specific design? Why such unprecedented scale? Earlier pyramids are smaller, later pyramids are also smaller. The Great Pyramid represents a pinnacle of ambition that was never repeated. What drove Khufu or his architects to attempt something so monumentally difficult? Sacsayhuaman. Above the city of Cusco in Peru, massive stone walls zigzag across a hillside. These are the remains of Sacsayhuaman, a complex constructed by the Inca Empire during the 15th century CE. The walls consist of enormous limestone boulders fitted together without mortar. Some stones weigh over 200 tons. They are shaped with curved, irregular surfaces, yet fit together so precisely that a knife blade cannot slip between them. The Inca did not use the wheel or have draft animals capable of pulling heavy loads. Llamas, the largest domesticated animals in pre-Columbian South America, can carry only about 30 kilograms. Moving stones weighing hundreds of tons required human labor exclusively. How many people? Using what techniques? The logistics seem staggering. One theory suggests the Inca quarried stones close to the construction site, minimizing transport distance. However, the limestone blocks came from quarries several kilometers away. Even if stones were rough cut at the quarry and finished on site, the transportation problem remains formidable. Rollers and sledges pulled by hundreds of workers could move such loads, but the terrain around Cusco is steep and uneven. Dragging multi-ton stones uphill over rough ground requires extraordinary effort and coordination. The fitting of the stones is perhaps more mysterious than their transport. Each block has a unique shape, fitting exactly with its neighbours. Achieving this precision required careful measurement and repeated adjustments. Workers must have shaped each stone to match its intended position. How were measurements taken? How was progress verified? Some researchers suggest stone surfaces were ground down progressively until perfect fit was achieved. Others propose templates or models guided the cutting. The methods used remain uncertain. No metal tools harder than bronze existed in the Inca Empire. Cutting and shaping hard limestone with bronze tools is possible but extremely laborious. Stone hammers and chisels were likely used for rougher work. Final shaping might have involved sand and water as abrasives. Whatever techniques were employed, the time investment must have been immense. Each stone could have required months of work. Seismic resistance was crucial in the Andean region, where earthquakes are frequent and powerful. The irregular, interlocking shapes of Sacsayhuaman's stones provide extraordinary earthquake resistance. During seismic events, the blocks shift slightly, absorbing energy, then settle back into place. Modern buildings in Cusco have collapsed in earthquakes that left Inca stonework intact. This engineering sophistication demonstrates deep understanding of seismic forces. The purpose of Sacsayhuaman is debated. Spanish chroniclers called it a fortress, noting its defensive walls and commanding position above Cusco. However, the layout seems impractical for military defense. More likely, Sacsayhuaman served ceremonial and administrative functions. Large plazas could accommodate gatherings for festivals and rituals. Storage facilities held goods for redistribution. The complex represented Inca power and organizational capability as much as any functional necessity. Inca oral traditions, recorded after Spanish conquest, credit the construction to the 9th Inca ruler, Pachacuti. In the mid-1500s CE, the work supposedly took decades and employed thousands of workers recruited through emitter, a system of mandatory public service. This explanation aligns with known Inca social organization, which was capable of mobilizing massive labor forces for state projects. Yet some researchers question whether the Incas built Sacsayhuaman at all. The precision of stonework at Sacsayhuaman and other sites like Ollantaytambo exceeds that of clearly documented Inca construction from the same period. This has led to speculation that an earlier culture might have built the megalithic foundations, which the Inca later incorporated and modified. No archaeological evidence supports this hypothesis. No culture before the Inca in the region showed similar construction techniques. The attribution to the Inca remains most plausible. The symbolic meaning of Sacsayhuaman's design might hold clues. The zigzag walls may represent lightning, sacred in Andean cosmology. The site's name might derive from satisfied falcon, connecting it to avian symbolism important in Inca religion. Every element of Inca architecture carried symbolic meaning. Understanding those meanings requires understanding a worldview largely lost with the empire's conquest. Puma Punku. Near Lake Titicaca in Bolivia, a field of enormous stone blocks lies scattered as if tossed by giants. This is Puma Punku, part of the larger Tiwanaku archaeological complex. The site predates the Inca Empire, flourishing between approximately 500 and 1000 CE. The precision and sophistication of stonework at Puma Punku has made it one of South America's most enigmatic ruins. The blocks at Puma Punku are notable for their precision. Some are cut with perfectly straight edges and right angles. Others have complex interlocking shapes, including H-blocks with recessed channels and holes. The precision approaches that of modern machining. Surfaces are smooth and flat. Holes are drilled perpendicular to surfaces. Angles are precisely 90 degrees. Achieving such accuracy with primitive tools seems nearly impossible. The stones are andesite and red sandstone, both hard materials. Andesite rates approximately 6 on the Mohs hardness scale, making it difficult to work with stone or bronze tools. How the Tiwanaku culture shaped these blocks with such precision remains unknown. Some blocks show no tool marks at all, as if cut with laser-like precision. This has led to wild speculation about ancient high technology, but such speculation is unnecessary. Evidence suggests the Tiwanaku possessed advanced stoneworking techniques, though exactly what those techniques were remains uncertain. Possible methods include using harder stones as tools, abrasives like sand to grind surfaces smooth, and patient, skilled craftsmanship over extended periods. The results might seem impossible to modern eyes accustomed to power tools, but human ingenuity and persistence can achieve remarkable results. The blocks are enormous, some weigh over 100 tons. They were quarried from locations up to 90 kilometers away, across difficult terrain, and requiring transport over water at some point. Moving such massive stones without wheeled vehicles or large draft animals required innovative approaches. Reed boats on Lake Titicaca might have transported stones across water. Sledges, rollers, and large labour crews could have handled overland transport. The effort invested indicates Puma Punku's immense importance to its builders. The site's layout suggests a sophisticated architectural plan. The blocks once formed a large platform with precise alignment to cardinal directions. Structures on the platform may have served ceremonial or administrative purposes. The precision of construction allowed for modular building, with interchangeable components fitting together in predetermined ways. This degree of architectural planning implies advanced mathematical and engineering knowledge. Puma Punku shows evidence of catastrophic destruction. Blocks are strewn across the site, many broken or displaced from their original positions. What caused this destruction? Earthquakes are a possibility. The Andean region experienced significant seismic activity. A major earthquake could have toppled structures and scattered blocks. Alternatively, human actions, such as looting of stone for later construction projects, might have dismantled the site. Spanish conquest and subsequent colonial periods saw extensive destruction of indigenous monuments. The Tiwanaku culture that built Puma Punku remains poorly understood. They developed a complex society with urban centres, agricultural systems, and long-distance trade networks. Around 1000 CE, Tiwanaku civilization collapsed, possibly due to prolonged drought that disrupted agricultural production. The population dispersed, and knowledge of Tiwanaku engineering and architectural techniques was lost. Later cultures, including the Inca, marvelled at Tiwanaku ruins but could not replicate their stonework. Legends recorded by Spanish chroniclers claim that Puma Punku was built in a single night by the god Viracocha. Such myths reflect the awe the ruins inspired in later peoples who had no memory of their construction. The technical achievement they represent exceeded anything visible in the post-Tiwanaku Andean world, leading to attribution to divine rather than human agency. Modern attempts to explain Puma Punku's construction without invoking lost super technologies or extraterrestrial intervention focus on underestimated human capabilities. Given sufficient time, labour, and incremental development of techniques, humans with Stone Age technology can accomplish remarkable feats. The precision at Puma Punku, while extraordinary, is not impossible. It represents the pinnacle of a culture's stone-working tradition, knowledge accumulated and refined over generations. Nan Madol, off the eastern shore of Pohnpei, island in Micronesia, a complex of artificial islets rises from a lagoon. This is Nan Madol, constructed between approximately 1300 CE by the Saudeleur dynasty. 92 artificial islands built on coral reefs support the remains of stone structures. Massive basalt columns, stacked horizontally like logs, form walls and platforms. The basalt comes from quarries on Pohnpei's opposite side, requiring transport across the island, and then by sea, to the construction site. The basalt columns are natural hexagonal formations created by cooling lava. These columns were quarried, transported, and stacked to create Nan Madol's distinctive architecture. Individual columns weigh up to 50 tons. Moving them without modern equipment required canoes, rafts, and significant organizational capacity. How the Saudeleur people accomplished this feat remains uncertain. One theory suggests that columns were floated on rafts or canoes, guided through channels to their destination. Once in position, they might have been rolled up earthen ramps onto platforms and walls. This explanation is plausible, but lacks direct evidence. No contemporary accounts describe the construction process. Oral traditions preserved by Pohnpeians offer mythological explanations involving magic or divine assistance, reflecting the same pattern seen elsewhere, where later cultures attribute ancient monuments to supernatural forces. Nan Madol's purpose seems to have been both residential and ceremonial. It served as the seat of the Saudeleur dynasty, housing ruling elites and religious leaders. Different islets had specific functions: residential areas, temples, burial sites, food preparation zones. The separation of functions across multiple islets suggests careful urban planning and social organization. The site's architecture incorporates sophisticated understanding of the marine environment. Canals between islets facilitated transportation by canoe. The basalt walls withstand wave action and storms that would destroy less robust construction. High tide brings water into some structures, creating pools within walled enclosures. This integration of natural tidal cycles into architecture shows adaptation to the island environment. Nan Madol was abandoned around 1600 CE. The reasons for abandonment are unclear. Political upheaval, environmental degradation, or shifts in power structures might have made the site untenable. Subsequent populations of Pohnpei avoided Nan Madol, regarding it as haunted or cursed. The ruins were left to jungle and sea, slowly being reclaimed by nature. The scale of labour required for Nan Madol's construction implies a highly stratified society capable of mobilising large workforces. Estimates suggest thousands of workers over several generations built the complex. Feeding and organising such labour on a relatively small island required efficient agricultural systems and centralised authority. The Saudeleur dynasty must have wielded considerable power to undertake and sustain such an ambitious project. Comparisons with other Pacific Island megalithic sites reveal some similarities but also unique features. Easter Island's Moai and Tonga's Ha'amonga trilithon demonstrate that Pacific cultures achieved impressive stoneworking without metal tools or large domesticated animals. Nan Madol's use of basalt columns as primary building material is distinctive. The approach shows creative use of locally available resources in forms that facilitated construction. Modern archaeology struggles to fully explain Nan Madol. The remoteness of Pohnpei limits research. Tropical conditions accelerate decay and make excavation difficult. Much of the site remains unexcavated. Underwater archaeology around the islets might reveal additional structures or provide clues about construction methods, but such research requires specialized expertise and funding. Local traditions hold that Nan Madol is sacred and should be treated with respect. Archaeological investigation must balance scientific inquiry with cultural sensitivity. the descendants of the people who built Nan Madol still live on Pompeii. Their knowledge, though filtered through centuries, offers insights unavailable through archaeology alone. Collaboration between archaeologists and local communities represents the best approach to unlocking Nan Madol's mysteries. Longyou Caves. In China's Zhejiang province, a series of large artificial caverns exists beneath a hill near the Ku River. Known as the Longyou Caves, these structures consist of at least 24 caves carved from solid siltstone. Each cave is massive, with volumes ranging from thousands to tens of thousands of cubic meters. The ceilings reach up to 30 meters above the floors. Pillars support the weight above. Walls and ceilings bear distinctive chisel marks arranged in patterns. The caves were rediscovered in 1992 when local farmers pumped water from flooded ponds, revealing entrances to the underground chambers. Prior to this, their existence was unknown to modern authorities, though local oral traditions mentioned bottomless ponds at the location. The sheer size and complexity of the caves astonished archaeologists. Dating the caves is difficult. No inscriptions, artifacts, or other direct evidence establishes when they were created. The chisel marks and construction techniques suggest hand tools, not modern machinery. Estimates place their creation somewhere between 2,000 and 500 years ago, possibly during the Eastern Zhou period or Han Dynasty. However, without definitive evidence, these remain educated guesses. The purpose of the Longyou Caves is unknown. They could have served as storage facilities, though their scale seems excessive for simple storage. Military uses, such as barracks or arsenals, are possible but unproven. Religious or ceremonial functions might explain the effort invested, particularly if the site held sacred significance. Some researchers suggest they were quarries, with the excavated stone used for construction projects elsewhere. However, no evidence of where such massive quantities of removed stone ended up has been found. The volume of material removed from the caves is staggering. Estimates exceed 1 million cubic meters. If carved by hand, the labor required would involve thousands of workers over many years, perhaps decades. Organizing and sustaining such an effort requires centralized authority, resource allocation, and social coordination typical of state-level societies. The chisel marks on the walls are uniform and deliberate. They follow consistent patterns, creating visual texture across surfaces. This suggests aesthetic considerations. The creators cared not just about excavating space, but about the appearance of that space. The marks are not random, but arranged in parallel lines, waves, or other geometric patterns. Why invest effort in decorating walls if the caves were purely functional? The structural engineering of the caves demonstrates sophisticated understanding. Pillars were left intact to support ceilings. The spacing and size of pillars reflect calculations about weight distribution and structural integrity. In over 2,000 years, the caves have not collapsed, testament to the soundness of their design. The creators understood rock mechanics well enough to create stable, large-span chambers in sedimentary stone. One unusual feature is the absence of any significant amount of excavated material near the site. Where did all the removed stone go? If used for construction elsewhere, one would expect to find structures built from similar siltstone in the region. None have been identified definitively. The mystery of the missing spoil adds another layer of puzzlement to the site. Flooding preserved the caves for centuries. The water that filled them prevented human disturbance and potentially slowed weathering. When pumped dry, the caves were essentially as their creators left them. This unusual preservation allows study of the original construction without modern modifications, a rare circumstance in archaeology. The Longyou Caves receive less international attention than more famous Chinese archaeological sites, yet they represent one of the ancient world's most ambitious underground construction projects. The scale, precision, and mystery surrounding their purpose place them among the most enigmatic archaeological discoveries. Kailasa Temple. In Maharashtra, India, a temple is carved from a single piece of rock. The Kailasa Temple at Ellora is not built but excavated. Workers started at the top of a cliff and cut downward and inward, removing approximately 200,000 tons of rock to reveal the structure. The temple complex includes the main shrine, surrounding halls, courtyards, and elaborate carvings of deities, elephants, and mythological scenes. The temple was commissioned by Rashtrakuta King Krishna I in the 8th century CE. It took approximately 100 years to complete. Workers used only hand tools, chisels, hammers, and picks. No machinery existed in this period. Every cubic meter of rock was removed by human labor, striking stone with iron tools day after day for generations. The achievement is extraordinary. The temple is 32 meters tall, 50 meters wide, and approximately 95 meters long. The structure replicates a freestanding temple in carved form, complete with elaborate architectural details. Pillars, beams, ceilings, and walls emerge from the surrounding rock as if the temple already existed within the cliff, merely waiting to be revealed. The carving technique required careful planning. Mistakes were irreversible. Removing too much stone could compromise structural integrity or destroy intended features. Workers must have followed detailed plans, possibly marking out the design on rock surfaces before cutting began. The coordination of hundreds of stoneworkers over decades required sophisticated project management. The sculptural decoration covering the temple is breathtaking. Deities carved in high relief seem to emerge from walls. Elephants support the structure as if bearing its weight. Scenes from Hindu epics, the Ramayana and Mahabharata, unfold across multiple panels. The level of detail demonstrates exceptional artistic skill. These were not crude carvings, but refined artworks created by master sculptors. The engineering challenges were significant. Creating a structure by subtraction rather than addition requires inverse thinking. Support structures must be planned carefully since they cannot be added later if weight distribution proves problematic. The temple's central shrine sits atop a base carved to resemble a mountain, with elephants at its foundation. This base had to support the massive weight of stone above, while itself being carved from the same rock. Miscalculation could have led to catastrophic failure. Local legend claims that the king's wife was ill, and he vowed to build a temple if she recovered. When she did, he ordered construction to begin. The architect promised the king could perform worship in the temple within a week. This legend is obviously impossible, given the century-long construction time, but it reflects the awe the completed temple inspired. Something so magnificent seemed beyond mere human capability. The temple's name, Kailasa, refers to Mount Kailash in the Himalayas, considered the abode of Lord Shiva. The structure represents Shiva's sacred mountain in architectural form. Every element carries religious symbolism. The temple is not just a building, but a three-dimensional representation of Hindu cosmology and devotion to Shiva. Comparison with other rock-cut temples at Ellora and elsewhere in India shows Kailasa as the pinnacle of this tradition. Earlier rock-cut caves are impressive, but smaller and less complex. Kailasa represents the culmination of centuries of developing techniques and ambition. No subsequent and rock-cut temple matched its scale or intricacy. Modern engineers examining the temple express astonishment at what was achieved with 8th century technology. Computer modelling of the structure shows that it stands stable, with weight distributed effectively throughout. The ancient architects understood principles of load-bearing and structural stability intuitively, applying them through experience rather than mathematical calculations. The Kailasa temple stands as testament to human persistence, faith, and artistic vision. Generations of workers dedicated their lives to its creation, carving away the mountain to reveal a masterpiece that endures over a millennium later. The question is not how it was built, but why. The answer lies in religious devotion so profound that no sacrifice of time, labour, or resources was too great. Yonaguni Monument. Beneath the waters off Yonaguni Island, Japan's westernmost territory, lies a curious underwater formation. Discovered in 1986 by a local diver, the Yonaguni Monument consists of what appear to be massive stone blocks, platforms, and terraces arranged in geometric patterns, Straight edges, right angles, and symmetrical features suggest artificial construction, yet the structure sits 25 meters underwater on the ocean floor. The formation spans approximately 150 meters by 40 meters and rises approximately 25 meters from the seabed. It consists of sandstone and mudstone bedrock. The most striking features include a large rectangular platform, terrace sections resembling steps, channels, or roads, and what some interpret as carved figures or hieroglyphics. The central question is whether the Yonaguni Monument is natural or artificial. Geologists point out that sandstone and mudstone form in horizontal layers. Vertical cracks develop naturally through geological processes. When erosion occurs along these natural planes, the result can be blocky, geometric formations that resemble artificial construction. Several natural formations around the world show similar features. However, some researchers argue that specific details at Yonaguni suggest human modification. Certain angles seem too precise for natural erosion. Some features, such as apparent post holes or grooves, seem deliberate. A stone that appears triangular and perched at an improbable angle is cited as evidence of human placement. The totality of features, proponents argue, goes beyond what natural processes alone would produce. If the monument is artificial, when was it built? The sea level around Yonaguni has risen significantly since the last ice age. The monument's current depth would place it above water approximately 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. This predates known advanced civilizations in the region. The Jomon culture existed in Japan during this period, but they are not known for megalithic construction. No other archaeological evidence suggests a civilization capable of monumental stonework existed in the area at that time. Mainstream archaeology generally classifies Yonaguni as a natural formation, perhaps with minor human modification. The geometric appearance results from natural geological process acting on sedimentary rock layers. The lack of clear tool marks, the absence of any artifacts associated with the formation, and the existence of similar natural structures elsewhere all support this interpretation. The controversy persists because human perception tends to see patterns and faces in random formations, a phenomenon called pareidolia. People want to see evidence of ancient civilizations, lost technologies, or mysteries that challenge conventional history. Yonaguni provides an ambiguous enough canvas for such projections. If Yonaguni is natural, it remains interesting as a geological formation. If human hands modified it in any way, even minor alterations to natural features, it would still be significant, showing human activity at a coastal location now submerged. The challenge lies in definitively distinguishing natural from artificial features in an underwater environment where detailed analysis is difficult. The Yonaguni Monument has become a popular dive site. Divers explore its features, and debates continue. Without extensive underwater excavation and detailed geological analysis, definitive conclusions remain out of reach. The monument exists in a liminal space between natural wonder and potential archaeological mystery, reflecting the human desire to find meaning and history in ambiguous evidence. Indus Script. Across the Indus Valley civilization, seals and tablets bear inscriptions in an unknown script. These inscriptions consist of symbols, pictographs representing animals, humans, and abstract forms. Approximately 400 distinct signs have been identified, though the corpus of inscriptions is limited. Most texts are short, averaging 5 symbols, with the longest inscription containing only 26 symbols. The Indus Valley civilization flourished from approximately 3,300 to 1,300 BCE in present-day Pakistan and northwest India. It was contemporary with ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, rivaling them in urban planning and cultural sophistication. Cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro show advanced architecture, including standardized bricks, drainage systems, and grid-based layouts. Despite thousands of inscribed objects, the Indus script remains undeciphered. The short length of inscriptions limits the data available for analysis. Long texts provide context and repetition that aid decipherment. With predominantly short inscriptions, statistical analysis becomes difficult. Additionally, no bilingual texts have been discovered. The Rosetta Stone, which enabled decipherment of Egyptian hieroglyphs, provided the same text in 3 scripts. No equivalent exists for the Indus Script. The language underlying the script is unknown. Dravidian, Indo-Aryan, or some extinct language family could be represented. Without knowing the language, phonetic values for symbols cannot be determined confidently. Researchers have proposed numerous decipherments, claiming the script represents Dravidian, Sanskrit, or Proto-Dravidian languages. None have gained widespread acceptance because they lack rigorous verification. Some scholars question whether the Indus script represents language at all. They propose it might be a non-linguistic symbol system, recording ownership, identity, or religious concepts without phonetic writing. The brevity of inscriptions and lack of grammatical structures typical of linguistic texts support this view. If true, attempts to decipher the script as phonetic writing are doomed to fail because the symbols do not encode spoken language. The symbols themselves are recognizable: humped bulls, elephants, fish, human figures, trees. These likely held symbolic meaning beyond literal representation. A bull might represent strength, fertility, or a clan totem. Multiple symbols together could convey complex ideas through symbolic association rather than phonetic spelling. The seals were used to stamp clay, leaving impressions. They appear on goods, suggesting roles in trade, administration, or ownership marking. The standardization of the script across the vast Indus Valley region indicates shared cultural practices and possibly centralized administration, though the civilization shows no evidence of palaces or monumental temples typical of contemporary Egypt and Mesopotamia. The Indus civilization declined around 1900 BCE. Cities were gradually abandoned, possibly due to climate change, shifting river courses, or other environmental factors. With the civilization's collapse, use of the script ceased. No later culture in the region shows continuity with Indus writing. This discontinuity eliminates the possibility of using later texts to understand earlier ones, a method that helped decipher cuneiform and hieroglyphs. Modern computational approaches apply statistical analysis and machine learning to the Indus script. Some studies claim to identify grammatical structures consistent with linguistic writing. Others remain skeptical, pointing out that ambiguous data can produce false patterns when subjected to sophisticated analysis. The debate continues, with occasional claims of breakthroughs that fade under scrutiny. The undeciphered Indus script represents a lost voice from one of humanity's earliest urban civilizations. Thousands of texts potentially containing information about religion, trade, governance, and daily life remain silent. Until definitive decipherment occurs, if it ever does, the Indus people's words are locked away, their stories untold. Linear A. On the island of Crete, clay tablets and other artifacts bear inscriptions in a script called Linear A. This writing system was used by the Minoan civilization from approximately 1800 to 1450 BCE. The script consists of approximately 90 syllabic signs, plus logograms representing whole words or concepts. It was used for administrative purposes, recording goods, transactions, and religious offerings. Linear A has never been deciphered. Unlike Linear B, a later script used by Mycenaean Greeks, which was successfully deciphered in 1952 by Michael Ventris. Linear A represents an unknown language. The two scripts share some signs, suggesting Linear B adapted Linear A for writing Greek. However, the underlying Minoan language of Linear A differs from Greek. Proposed identifications for the Minoan language include Luwian, an Anatolian language, or a pre-Indo-European isolate with no known relatives. Without bilingual texts or known language to compare, assigning phonetic values to Linear A signs is speculative. Some values can be inferred from Linear B, but this approach assumes the signs had the same phonetic values in both scripts, which may not be accurate. The corpus of Linear A texts is limited. Approximately 1,400 inscriptions survive, most short and repetitive. They primarily record offerings and inventories at religious sites. Longer administrative texts from palaces at Knossos and elsewhere are rare. The limited and repetitive nature of the text constrains decipherment efforts. Numbers in Linear A are understood. The Minoans used a decimal system with signs for units, tens, hundreds, and thousands. These numerical signs are recognizable across texts, allowing quantification of recorded goods even without reading the associated words. Certain logograms, such as those for wheat, figs, or livestock, can be identified through context and comparison with later scripts. Some words in Linear A recur frequently at what appear to be religious sites. These may be divine names, titles of deities, or ritual terminology. Identifying such words could provide clues to Minoan religion, but without understanding the language, interpretation remains guesswork. The Minoan civilization collapsed around 1450 BCE, possibly due to the eruption of Thera, modern Santorini, or subsequent Mycenaean conquest. Linear A fell out of use, replaced by Linear B as Greek-speaking Mycenaeans came to dominate Crete. The discontinuity meant no later tradition preserved knowledge of the Minoan language or script. Attempts to decipher Linear A continue. Each new proposal garners attention, but none have withstood rigorous testing. The challenge remains. Too little text, no bilingual Rosetta Stone, and an unknown language. Until a major discovery provides new data, Linear A will likely remain mysterious, a window into Minoan culture that we can see through but not fully open. Rongorongo. On Easter Island, known to its inhabitants as Rapa Nui, wooden tablets covered with glyphs tell a story that no one can read. These are Rongorongo texts, one of the few independent inventions of writing in human history. The glyphs are small, intricately carved symbols representing humans, animals, plants, and abstract shapes. They are arranged in lines that alternate direction, a system called reverse boustrophodon. One line reads left to right, the next right to left, with glyphs inverted, creating a flowing, continuous text. Only 25 Rongorongo tablets survive. Most were destroyed after European contact and Christian conversion of the island's population in the mid-19th century. Missionaries burned many tablets as pagan relics. Those that survived were collected by European visitors, or preserved by islanders who recognized their value too late. Deciphering Rongorongo has proven extraordinarily difficult. The surviving texts are short. No bilingual inscriptions exist. By the time anyone recognized the script's importance, all individuals who could read it had died. Attempts to find elders who remembered the meanings failed. A few elderly Rapa Nui in the late 19th century claimed knowledge, but their readings were inconsistent and contradictory, likely reconstructions or improvisation rather than true literacy. The language underlying Rongorongo is Rapa Nui, a Polynesian language. This is known, but without phonetic values for the glyphs, the texts remain unreadable. Are the symbols logograms representing whole words, syllabograms representing syllables, or some combination? Different researchers have proposed all three models. Some glyphs are recognizable: birds, fish, human figures, plants. A recurring glyph resembling a birdman might represent the island's birdman cult, a religious ceremony central to later Rapa Nui culture. Other glyphs are abstract, their meanings obscure. Repeated sequences suggest formulaic phrases, possibly religious invocations, genealogies, or calendrical information. Statistical analysis shows non-random patterns. Certain glyph combinations occur frequently. Glyphs appear in preferred positions. These patterns suggest genuine writing, rather than random decoration. However, patterns alone cannot crack the code. Without a key, the text remains stubbornly silent. One controversial theory proposed in the early 21st century suggested Rongorongo recorded navigational information, star maps, or astronomical observations. The idea gained popular attention but lacked solid evidence. Other researchers dismissed it as speculative, noting that the text context suggests religious or genealogical content rather than scientific data. The origin of Rongorongo is debated. When did Rapa Nui develop writing? Some scholars suggest it emerged after European contact in 1722, inspired by seeing Spanish written documents. This would make Rongorongo a remarkably rapid independent invention, developed, used, and lost within approximately 150 years. Others argue that the script is older, predating European arrival, making it a truly independent invention of writing in one of the world's most isolated locations. If Rongorongo predates European contact, it represents an extraordinary achievement. The Rapa Nui people, isolated on a tiny island in the Pacific, independently developed complex writing without external influence. Only a handful of cultures in human history achieved this. Mesopotamia, Egypt, China, Mesoamerica, and possibly the Indus Valley. Add in Rapa Nui to this list underscores the island culture's sophistication. The mystery of Rongorongo reflects the tragedy of cultural destruction. A unique intellectual achievement, potentially preserving Rapa Nui history, religion, and knowledge, was nearly obliterated. The few surviving tablets are treasures, but without the key to read them, they remain frustratingly opaque, silent witnesses to a lost tradition. Phaistos Disc. In the ruins of the Minoan Palace at Phaistos on Crete, archaeologists in 1908 discovered a clay disc covered with stamped symbols. The Phaistos Disc is approximately 15 centimeters in diameter and slightly over 1 centimeter thick. Both sides bear a spiral of stamped impressions, 241 symbols in total, representing 45 distinct signs. The symbols depict human figures, animals, plants, tools, and geometric shapes. The disc dates to approximately 1700 BCE, during the Minoan period. It is unique. No other artifact uses the same script or stamping technique. The symbols were not carved individually, but impressed using prepared stamps or seals, suggesting a form of movable type over 3,000 years before Gutenberg. This technique is unprecedented in Bronze Age Crete or anywhere else in the ancient world. The text spirals inward from the edge to the center on both sides. Vertical lines separate groups of symbols, possibly indicating words or phrases. The spiral arrangement and division into groups suggest organized text rather than random symbols. But what does it say? Decipherment attempts have proliferated, each claiming to unlock the disc's message. Proposals identify the language as Greek, Luwian, Phoenician, and even invented languages. Some claim it's a prayer, others a royal decree, a list of conquered cities, a calendar, or a board game. None of these proposals have gained acceptance because they cannot be verified. With a single short text and no comparative material, any proposed reading is essentially guesswork. Skeptics have questioned the disc's authenticity, the unique nature of both the object and its script, the lack of comparable artifacts, and its discovery in the early 20th century, when archaeological forgeries were not uncommon, raised suspicions. However, most scholars accept the disc as genuine. Its clay composition matches other Minoan pottery. The patina and aging appear consistent with ancient artifacts. The archaeological context of its discovery supports authenticity. If genuine, why is it unique? Why haven't other examples of this script or stamping technique been found? Several explanations are possible. Perhaps the disc came from elsewhere, imported to Crete from a culture that used this script. Maybe it's a one-off experiment, a Minoan scribe trying a new technology that was never widely adopted. Alternatively, other examples may exist but remain undiscovered, buried in unexcavated sites, or destroyed over millennia. The purpose of the disc is unknown. Was it a religious object, an administrative record, a literary text? The deliberate destruction of one side's center, where a small hole has been punched through, suggests possible ritual decommissioning. Some researchers propose it was rotated or displayed, perhaps during ceremonies, though evidence for this is lacking. The symbols themselves are intriguing. A figure wears a plumed headdress, possibly indicating a warrior or priest. A woman's head with elaborate hair might represent a goddess or queen. A ship suggests maritime activity, central to Minoan culture. A walking man, a bull, a fish, all connect to Minoan life and symbolism. Yet without understanding the text, interpreting individual symbols remains speculative. The Phaistos Disc occupies a peculiar place in archaeology. It is undeniably real, undeniably ancient, and undeniably mysterious. It represents either a tantalizing glimpse of a lost writing system or a bizarre historical anomaly, a singular object that defies categorization. Until comparable texts are discovered, the disc will remain one of archaeology's most frustrating puzzles, a message from the past that we cannot read. Inca Quipus. In the Inca Empire, spanning much of western South America in the 15th and 16th centuries CE, information was recorded not with writing, but with knots. Quipus, also spelled quipus, consist of coloured strings hanging from a main cord. Knots tied at various positions along the strings record numerical data. The colour, length and position of strings, along with the type, quantity and location of knots, encoded information. Quipus served as sophisticated accounting tools. They recorded tribute owed and paid, census data, agricultural production, military resources, and other administrative information essential to managing a vast empire. Trained Quipucameocs, knot keepers, created and interpreted Quipus, managing the information flows that kept the Inca state functioning. The numerical system used in Quipus is well understood. Knots represent units, tens, hundreds, and thousands in a decimal system. Different knot types distinguish values. Simple knots indicate single units. Long knots, with multiple turns, represent numbers 2 through 9 in the unit's place. The position of knots along the string indicates magnitude. This system allowed precise recording of quantities. However, Quipus recorded more than numbers. Spanish chroniclers, after the conquest, reported that Quipus contained historical narratives, royal genealogies, and other non-numerical information. How this was encoded remains mysterious. Colour symbolism likely played a role. Red might represent warfare or the Inca king. Yellow could indicate gold or the sun. Spatial arrangements, string groupings, and knot placements might convey additional meanings beyond numerical values. Despite understanding the numerical aspects, the narrative or linguistic content of Quipus has never been deciphered. No Rosetta Stone exists providing the same information in both Quipu and alphabetic writing. The Spanish conquerors destroyed most Quipus, considering them idolatrous or fearing they contained subversive information. Only a few hundred survive, mostly numerical administrative records. Any Quipus that contained historical or literary content are lost or unrecognizable as such. Modern researchers use computational analysis to search for patterns that might reveal linguistic encoding. Some studies claim to have identified phonetic or logographic elements, but verification is impossible without independent confirmation. The challenge is distinguishing meaningful patterns from random correlations in limited data. One promising approach involves examining colonial-era documents that describe specific Quipus. If a Spanish account details information supposedly recorded in a particular Quipu, comparing the description to the surviving artifact might provide clues. However, such matched pairs are rare, and Spanish descriptions are often vague or second-hand. The Inca Quipu represents a fundamentally different approach to information recording than alphabetic writing. It is a three-dimensional, tactile, and potentially multimodal system encoding information through knots, colours, spacing, and structure. Understanding it requires thinking beyond phonetic writing to encompass alternative encoding methods humans have developed. If the narrative capabilities of Quipus could be unlocked, it would revolutionize understanding of Inca history and culture. Inca perspectives on their own past, religious beliefs, political philosophy, all could be preserved in surviving Quipus. These knotted strings might contain an entire literature waiting to be read, but without the key, they remain silent, their stories locked in tangles of coloured cord. Sangxingdui. In Sichuan province, China, farmers working fields in 1929 accidentally unearthed jade and stone artifacts. Decades later, in 1986, archaeologists excavating the site discovered two large pits filled with extraordinary objects. Bronze masks with protruding eyes, enormous bronze heads, a bronze tree over 4 meters tall covered with birds and ornaments, jade blades, elephant tusks, cowrie shells, and burned animal bones. The objects were ritually destroyed or damaged before burial, suggesting ceremonial deposition. Sanxingdui represents a previously unknown civilization that flourished approximately 3,000 to 4,000 years ago. The bronze work is sophisticated, showing advanced metallurgical techniques. The artistic style is unlike anything from contemporary Chinese cultures. The masks are particularly striking, oversized, with exaggerated features, protruding cylindrical eyes, and elaborate headdresses. Some wear gold foil. They seem alien, not fitting conventional ideas of ancient Chinese art. Who created these artifacts? The culture is called Sanxingdui after the site, but its people's identity is unknown. They were contemporary with China's Shang dynasty, but Sanxingdui shows little influence from Shang culture. The styles are distinct. Sanxingdui bronze work emphasizes masks and standing figures. Shang bronzes focus on ritual vessels with animal motifs. The difference suggests independent development or influence from entirely different sources. No written records from Sanxingdui have been found. Without texts, understanding the culture's language, beliefs, and social structure is challenging. The artifacts suggest religious practices involving ancestor worship, nature veneration, or deity propitiation. The bronze tree might represent a cosmic tree connecting earth and heaven, a motif appearing in many cultures. The masks could depict gods, mythical ancestors, or shamanic spirit forms. The civilization vanished around 1100 BCE. The city was abandoned and the culture ceased producing its distinctive artifacts. What caused the collapse? Environmental disaster, warfare, political upheaval, or cultural assimilation into neighbouring societies are all possibilities. The lack of written records leaves the question unanswered. Recent excavations have uncovered additional pits and artifacts, expanding understanding of Sanxingdui's extent and sophistication. Silk fragments, gold objects, and more bronze figures continue to emerge. Each discovery adds detail but doesn't answer fundamental questions about who these people were and what happened to them. The bronze masks' purpose is debated. Were they worn in rituals, mounted on wood, or fabric bodies to create effigies, or purely symbolic objects? The lack of eye holes in most masks argues against wearing them. They might have been mounted on temple walls or carried in processions. Their exaggerated features suggest they were meant to inspire awe or represent supernatural beings beyond normal human appearance. Sanxingdui challenges narratives of Chinese civilization developing from a single Yellow River Valley origin. It demonstrates that multiple sophisticated cultures existed simultaneously in ancient China, some developing in isolation or with limited contact. The archaeological orthodoxy that emphasized a unified, linear development of Chinese culture from single sources has been complicated by Sanxingdui's discovery. Comparisons with cultures beyond China reveal some interesting parallels. The bronzework style shows similarities to Southeast Asian and even Mesoamerican artifacts, though direct contact is implausible. These similarities likely result from universal human aesthetic responses or independent development of similar symbolic forms rather than historical connections. The mystery of Sanxingdui persists. Ongoing excavations continue revealing artifacts, but without written records or clear connections to later cultures. Fundamental aspects of this civilization remain unknown. The bronze masks stare out from museum displays with their unsettling protruding eyes, silent witnesses to a lost world. Indus Valley Civilization. Stretching across what is now Pakistan and northwest India, the Indus Valley Civilization, also called Harappan Civilization, after one of its major cities, flourished from approximately 3,300 to 1,300 BCE. It was one of the world's earliest urban civilizations, contemporary with ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. Yet in many ways, it remains more mysterious than either. The cities show remarkable urban planning. Streets laid out in grid patterns run perpendicular to each other. Standardized burnt bricks were used for construction, with consistent size ratios suggesting centralized standards. Houses had private wells and bathrooms with sophisticated drainage systems. Wastewater flowed through covered drains lining the streets, emptying into larger sewers. This level of urban infrastructure was not matched in Europe for thousands of years. Major cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro housed tens of thousands of people. Public buildings, granaries, and possible administrative centres indicate organised governance, yet no palaces or monumental temples have been identified. This contrasts sharply with Egypt's pyramids and Mesopotamia's ziggurats. The Indus civilization appears to have been relatively egalitarian, or at least less ostentatiously hierarchical than contemporary civilizations. The economy was based on agriculture, craft production, and long-distance trade. Indus seals and artifacts have been found in Mesopotamia, indicating trade networks spanning thousands of kilometers. The civilization exported cotton textiles, carnelian beads, copper, and other goods. What imports they received is less clear, but Mesopotamian sources mention traders from Meluhha, likely referring to the Indus region. The civilization's decline around 1900 BCE is not well understood. Cities were gradually abandoned, not destroyed catastrophically. Climate change, particularly the drying of the Sarasvati river system mentioned in Vedic texts, may have disrupted agriculture. Shifts in monsoon patterns could have reduced crop yields. Alternatively, economic disruptions caused by collapsed trade networks or internal social changes might have led to urban abandonment. The lack of written records means we have only archaeological evidence which cannot easily distinguish between these scenarios. No evidence of warfare exists, no city walls, no weapons caches, no artistic depictions of battles. Some bodies found at Mohenjo-Daro show signs of violent death, but these are few and their context ambiguous. Whether the Indus civilization was genuinely peaceful or simply lacks preserved evidence of conflict is unknown. The relationship between the Indus civilization and later Vedic culture of the Indo-Aryans is contentious. Did the Indus people speak an early form of Sanskrit, or a Dravidian language, or something else entirely? Did Indo-Aryan migrations contribute to or cause the civilization's decline, or did they arrive later, after urban centers were already abandoned? Linguistic, genetic, and archaeological evidence all contribute to this debate, but consensus remains elusive. Artistic representations in the Indus civilization are limited. Unlike Egypt's abundant tomb paintings or Mesopotamia's palace reliefs, Indus art consists mainly of small-scale terracotta figurines, seals with animal motifs, and occasional carved stones. A bronze dancing girl statue from Mohenjo-Daro is one of the few three-dimensional human figures. Her confident pose and detailed jewelry suggest a culture that valued artistic expression, but most such art has not survived or remains undiscovered. The Indus civilization's enigmatic nature results partly from what has not been found. No extensive texts, no obvious religious structures, no clearly identifiable royal burials. This absence of elements common to other ancient civilizations makes interpretation difficult. What we see in the archaeological record may not represent the culture's most important aspects. Oral traditions, perishable materials like wood or textiles, and beliefs that left no material trace could have been central to Indus society but are invisible to modern archaeologists. The Olmecs. In the tropical lowlands of what is now southern Mexico, the Olmec civilization emerged around 1600 BCE, predating the Maya and other Mesoamerican civilizations. The Olmecs are often called Mesoamerica's mother culture, because elements of their civilization influenced later cultures throughout the region. Yet the Olmecs themselves remain mysterious. The most iconic Olmec artifacts are massive stone heads carved from basalt boulders. 17 have been discovered, ranging from 1.5 to 3.4 meters tall and weighing up to 50 tons. Each head portrays a distinct individual with unique facial features. they wear elaborate headdresses that might represent helmets or ceremonial headgear. Who these individuals were is unknown. Theories range from rulers and warriors to deities and mythical heroes. The basalt for these heads came from quarries in the Tuxtla Mountains, up to 100 kilometers from where the heads were erected, moving multi-ton stones through tropical jungle and across. Rivers without wheeled vehicles or large draft animals required ingenious techniques and massive labor mobilization. The Olmecs must have used wooden rollers, rafts, and large work parties to accomplish these feats. Olmec influence spread across Mesoamerica. Their distinctive art style, featuring were-jaguar motifs combining human and feline features, appears across a wide area. Trade networks distributed Olmec goods and ideas. Later, Mesoamerican civilizations adopted elements of Olmec cosmology, calendrics, and possibly writing. The ball game, a ritual sport played throughout Mesoamerica for millennia, may have originated with the Olmecs. The Olmecs developed early forms of Mesoamerican writing and calendar systems. Inscriptions on stone monuments show symbols that might represent words or concepts. However, these texts are few and fragmentary. No extensive written records survive. Whether the Olmec script was a true writing system, encoding language, or a more limited set of symbolic notations is debated. The civilization's religious beliefs are partially reconstructed from iconography. Jaguars held special significance, possibly representing powerful shamanic spirits or deities. Serpents, birds, and composite creatures appear frequently. Human sacrifice seems to have been practiced, as in later Mesoamerican cultures. Burial practices suggest beliefs in an afterlife requiring grave goods to assist the deceased. Major Olmec centers included San Lorenzo, La Venta, and Tres Zapores. These sites featured earthen pyramids, plazas, and elaborate stone drainage systems. The scale of construction indicates centralized authority capable of organizing large-scale labor. However, the Olmec political structure is unclear. Were these city-states ruled by kings, theocracies led by priest rulers, or something else? Around 400 BCE, Olmec civilization declined. San Lorenzo was abandoned around 900 BCE, possibly following violence indicated by defaced monuments. La Venta declined later, but also shows evidence of intentional destruction. Whether internal conflict, environmental degradation, or external pressures caused these collapses is unknown. The Olmec legacy lived on in successor cultures. The Maya, Zapotec, Teotihuacán, and later Mesoamerican civilizations all show Olmec influence. Some scholars question the mother culture model, arguing that Mesoamerican civilization developed from multiple sources simultaneously. However, the Olmec priority in developing certain cultural elements is well established. Genetic and linguistic studies of the region's populations offer limited insight into Olmec origins and fate. The tropical climate destroys organic materials, including human remains, limiting what can be learned through physical anthropology. Most information comes from durable materials, stone monuments, pottery, and jade artifacts. The colossal heads remain the Olmec's most enduring mystery. Why carve these massive portraits? Were they commemorations of specific rulers, generalized representations of leadership, or religious icons? The effort invested in creating and transporting them indicates their profound importance, but their specific meaning is lost. They stare across millennia with their broad features and inscrutable expressions, keeping their secrets. Sea peoples. In the late 13th and early 12th centuries, BCE, the Eastern Mediterranean world faced catastrophic upheaval. The Hittite Empire collapsed. Mycenaean Greece's palace centres were destroyed. City-states across the Levant burned. Egypt barely survived invasions that killed one pharaoh and devastated another's reign. Contemporary texts blame mysterious invaders called the Sea Peoples. Egyptian inscriptions, particularly those of Pharaoh Ramesses III, describe battles against coalitions of foreign groups arriving by land and sea. The names given include Peliset, Jekka, Shekelesh, Denian, and Weshesh. Some scholars attempt to connect these names to later historical peoples. Peliset as Philistines, Shekelesh as Sicilians, Denian as Danans. These identifications are speculative and debated. Who were the Sea Peoples? Where did they come from? Why did they migrate or invade simultaneously across such a wide area? No contemporary accounts from their perspective exist. We know them only through their enemies' descriptions, which may be biased, simplified, or inaccurate. Several theories attempt to explain the Sea Peoples phenomenon. One proposes they were refugees fleeing drought, famine, or other disasters in their homelands. Unable to sustain themselves, they migrated en masse, attacking civilizations they encountered to obtain resources. This displaced population model explains simultaneous movements across wide areas. Another theory suggests the Sea Peoples were not a unified group, but a convenient label Egyptians applied to various raiders, mercenaries, and pirates who took advantage of collapsing Bronze Age systems. As trade networks disintegrated and palace centers weakened, displaced populations and opportunistic groups moved into the power vacuum, appearing as invaders to Egyptian scribes. Systems collapse theory proposes that the Bronze Age Mediterranean was interconnected economically. When one part failed, perhaps due to drought, earthquake, or internal problems, the ripple effects cascaded through the system. Trade disruptions led to economic failures, which sparked migrations, which further disrupted trade, creating a feedback loop. The Sea Peoples were not the cause, but one symptom of broader systems failure. Recent archaeological evidence complicates simple invasion narratives. Destructions at various sites do not all date to the same narrow time period. Some show fire damage, others organized abandonment. Material culture changes suggesting new populations appear at some locations, but not others. The picture is messy, suggesting complex processes rather than a single wave of invaders. Some destroyed cities show signs of internal conflict or deliberate dismantling by their own inhabitants before abandonment. Economic stress, political instability, or social unrest could have caused palace centers to collapse from within, with external attacks being secondary factors or taking advantage of already weakened states. The aftermath of the Bronze Age collapse is clear. The palace-based economies of the late Bronze Age disappeared. Writing fell out of use in many areas, beginning a dark age. Trade networks fragmented, populations declined. It took centuries for new political structures to emerge, the city-states of Iron Age Greece, the kingdoms of Neo-Assyria and Neo-Babylonia, and a reorganized Egypt. The Philistines, appearing in Canaan after this period, may represent one Sea Peoples group that settled and assimilated. Their pottery shows connections to Mycenaean and Cypriot styles, suggesting Aegean origins. However, direct evidence linking them to the Sea Peoples mentioned in Egyptian texts is limited. The Sea Peoples remain frustratingly shadowy. Were they heroes fleeing disasters, villainous raiders destroying civilizations, or simply ordinary people caught in extraordinary circumstances and labelled by Egyptian propagandists? Without their own records, we may never know. They exist as historical ghosts, blamed for devastation, but never fully visible themselves. Caral-Supe. In the Supe Valley of Peru, approximately 200 kilometers north of modern Lima, lie the ruins of Caral. This site represents one of the America's oldest known urban centers, contemporary with the Egyptian pyramids and predating Mesoamerican cities by over a millennium. The Caral-Supe civilization flourished from approximately 3000 to 1800 BCE. Caral features monumental architecture, 6 large platform mounds, sunken circular plazas, and residential complexes. The largest pyramid is 18 meters tall, with a base covering an area larger than 4 football fields. Construction used stone and quarried blocks held together with woven bags filled with rock called shikra. These bags, numbering in the millions, facilitated construction and are distinctive to the region's early architecture. The civilization developed without pottery, without apparent warfare, and with limited artistic representation. These absences distinguish Caral-Supe from later Andean cultures. The lack of pottery is particularly notable. Pottery typically appears early in agricultural societies. Caral-Supe's reliance on gourds and baskets for containers represents an alternative technological path. No fortifications or weapons have been found at Caral. No evidence of violent destruction appears in the archaeological record. Artistic depictions of warfare, common in later Andean cultures, are absent. This suggests either genuinely peaceful coexistence or that conflicts occurred in ways that left no archaeological trace. The economy was based on agriculture, fishing, and trade. Cotton grown in the valley was traded to coastal communities for fish and shellfish. This interdependence between inland and coastal populations created stable exchange networks. Monumental construction at Caral and other contemporary sites in the region indicates surplus production and organised labour. Musical instruments found at Caral include flutes made from bird and animal bones. These could produce multiple notes, suggesting developed musical traditions. Music may have played roles in religious ceremonies or communal gatherings. The presence of amphitheatres or gathering spaces at the sites supports this interpretation. What belief systems motivated construction of Caral's monuments? Without written records or extensive iconographic art, reconstructing religious beliefs is speculative. The circular, sunken plazas might have served ceremonial functions. Fire pits found within them suggest offerings were burned. Alignment of structures with astronomical features hints at calendrical observations or cosmological beliefs. Around 1800 BCE, Caral and other super valley sites were abandoned. Climate change, particularly increased drought or shifts in river patterns, may have disrupted agriculture. Alternatively, social or political changes could have led populations to relocate. The abandonment appears gradual rather than catastrophic, suggesting planned departure rather than sudden disaster. The Caral-Supe civilization's significance lies in demonstrating that urban complexity can emerge without pottery, metallurgy, or agriculture beyond cotton, gourds, and squash, supplemented by marine resources. It challenges assumptions about necessary preconditions for civilization. The New World developed civilizations along trajectories different from Old World patterns, and Caral-Supe is an early example. The relationship between Caral-Supe and later Andean civilizations is unclear. Did cultural continuity exist, with later peoples inheriting practices and beliefs from Caral-Supe? Or was Caral-Supe an isolated development that ended without influence in subsequent cultures? The architectural use of shikra bags disappeared after Caral-Supe, suggesting discontinuity. However, broader patterns like platform mound construction persist in later Andean cultures. Caral challenges narratives that place Mesoamerica as the sole early center of American civilization. South America developed urban complexity independently and earlier than many Central American cultures. This parallel development underscores the creativity and adaptability of human societies, finding diverse solutions to challenges of organizing complex communities. Antikythera Mechanism. In 1901, Greek sponge divers exploring a shipwreck off Antikythera Island recovered corroded bronze fragments among other artifacts. Initially overlooked, these pieces were eventually recognized as parts of a complex geared mechanism. X-ray analysis revealed over 30 interlocking gears within a wooden frame. Inscriptions covered the exterior. This was the Antikythera Mechanism, dating to approximately 100 BCE. The device is an astronomical calculator of extraordinary sophistication. Rotating a crank on the side moved gears that calculated and displayed positions of the sun, moon, and planets. It predicted eclipses, tracked the metonic cycle, a 19-year period after which lunar phases repeat on the same calendar dates, and possibly showed planetary positions. Inscriptions provided user instructions and astronomical data. The complexity of the mechanism is stunning. Differential gearing, thought invented in the 16th century CE, appears in the device. The gear teeth are precisely cut. The mechanism compensated for the moon's elliptical orbit, an astronomical irregularity that sophisticated calculations were needed to model. The device represents a level of technological and scientific sophistication unsuspected in ancient Greece. Who built it? Where? For what purpose? The answers are unknown. No ancient text describes such devices, though some references to astronomical instruments exist. The 1st century BCE Roman philosopher Cicero mentions a device built by Archimedes that showed planetary motions. Archimedes lived in the 3rd century BCE in Syracuse. Could the Antikythera Mechanism be related to Archimedean instruments? The mechanism's origin is speculated based on astronomical data it incorporates. Certain parameters match those used in Rhodes or northern Greece. The shipwreck contained other artifacts, including statues and pottery, suggesting a cargo ship transporting goods, possibly plundered from Greece to Rome. The mechanism might have been loot or legitimate cargo. Only one example has been found. Was this unique, or did similar devices exist that have not survived? Bronze was valuable and recycled. Any mechanisms not lost at sea would likely have been melted down for metal. Perhaps dozens or hundreds existed, but only this one, preserved by shipwreck, survived. The technology represents a dead end. No later devices show direct continuity with the Antikythera Mechanism's design. Islamic astronomers developed sophisticated instruments centuries later, but these appear independently invented. Medieval European astronomical clocks show similar principles, but no direct link to the Antikythera device. The knowledge required to build such mechanisms was lost when Hellenistic scientific traditions declined. Reconstruction projects have built working replicas. These demonstrate the mechanism functioned as theorized. The precision required to cut gears and assemble components is high but achievable with Bronze Age tools and techniques. A skilled craftsman with mathematical knowledge could build it, given sufficient time and resources. The inscriptions are partially legible. They describe astronomical periods, eclipse predictions, and possibly a user manual. Ongoing. Analysis using advanced imaging techniques continues, revealing more text. Each new reading adds details about the mechanism's functions and the astronomical knowledge of its builders. The Antikythera mechanism forces reconsideration of ancient technological capabilities. It demonstrates that given motivation, knowledge, and resources, ancient craftsmen could create devices of remarkable complexity. The mechanism is not evidence of lost super-civilization or anachronistic technology. It is evidence of brilliant minds applying their knowledge creatively, producing something that survived only by accident to astonish us millennia later. Costa Rican stone spheres. In the Diquís Delta and Isla del Caño of Costa Rica, nearly perfect stone spheres lie scattered across the landscape. They range from a few centimeters to over 2 meters in diameter, weighing up to 15 tons. Approximately 300 have been documented. They are carved from gabbro, a hard, igneous rock. The precision is remarkable. Some spheres deviate from perfect sphericity by less than 2 centimeters. The spheres were created by the Diqui culture between approximately 600 and 1500 CE. The manufacturing process involves selecting suitable boulders, rough shaping through controlled fracturing, and prolonged grinding and polishing. Experiments show that creating a large sphere required thousands of hours of work. Tools included harder stone hammers and abrasives. The purpose of the spheres is unknown. They were placed in groups, sometimes arranged in lines or geometric patterns. These arrangements suggest symbolic or astronomical significance. Some researchers propose they represented celestial bodies, social hierarchies, or territorial markers. The spheres might have lined pathways leading to important sites or demarcated ceremonial spaces. When Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 16th century, the Diquís culture had already declined. No living tradition explained the sphere's purpose. Later, treasure hunters damaged many spheres, drilling or breaking them open, searching for gold or artifacts. Others were moved from original locations to private properties or public spaces, destroying archaeological context. The lack of context makes interpretation difficult. Where spheres remain in situ, their arrangements can be studied, but many have been displaced. The original patterns are lost. This cultural vandalism robbed us of crucial information about the sphere's functions and meanings. Some spheres show damage from exposure. The gabbro weathers slowly, but centuries of rain and vegetation growth have degraded surfaces. Precise measurement of sphericity becomes less reliable as weathering progresses. Despite this, many spheres retain their remarkable roundness, testament to the skill of their creators. Legends among modern Costa Ricans attribute the spheres to lost civilizations, giants, or even extraterrestrial visitors. These legends reflect fascination with the spheres but provide no historical insight. The Dikis people, though lacking writing, were capable of creating these objects using Stone Age technology and patient effort. Comparisons with other cultures reveal similar practices. Easter Island's moai, while statues rather than spheres, show comparable effort invested in stoneworking. Mesoamerican ball courts used rubber balls in ritual games. The human impulse to create perfect spheres appears cross-culturally, possibly reflecting symbolic importance of circular forms representing celestial bodies, cycles, or perfection. The Costa Rican stone spheres are protected as UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Efforts to preserve remaining spheres and document their locations aim to prevent further loss. Archaeological research continues, hoping to find undisturbed sites where spheres remain in original arrangements, potentially revealing their purpose. Copper Scroll. Among the Dead Sea Scrolls discovered near Qumran in the West Bank, one stands out. Unlike other scrolls written on parchment or papyrus, the copper scroll is engraved on thin copper sheets. Dating to approximately 50 to 100 CE, it lists locations where vast quantities of gold, silver, and other treasures are supposedly hidden. The quantities mentioned are enormous, tons of precious metal and numerous vessels. The scroll is a treasure map. It provides directions to 64 locations where treasures were buried or hidden. The directions reference known and unknown landmarks, distances measured in cubits, and depths to dig. Attempts to follow these directions have failed. Either the treasures no longer exist, the directions are deliberately misleading, or the landmarks have changed beyond recognition. Who hid these treasures? Why? Several theories exist. One suggests the treasures belong to the Second Temple in Jerusalem, hidden before the Roman destruction in 70 CE. The quantities align with ancient descriptions of the temple's wealth. Priestly groups might have buried valuables, intending to retrieve them after the crisis passed. Another theory proposes the scroll is fictional, a work of fantasy or allegory rather than a genuine inventory. The quantities mentioned are implausibly large. Even if the Second Temple was wealthy, the amounts listed seem exaggerated. The scroll might encode symbolic meanings rather than literal treasure locations. The Hebrew used in the Copper Scroll is distinct from other Dead Sea Scrolls. The language is more colloquial, resembling spoken Mishnaic Hebrew rather than formal literary Hebrew. This difference suggests different authorship from the predominantly sectarian religious texts found at Qumran. The scroll's physical creation was laborious. Engraving text on copper required significant effort compared to writing on parchment. Why go to this trouble for a hoax? The durability of copper ensures preservation, appropriate for a document meant to last until treasures could be recovered. This argues for the scroll's genuineness. Expeditions have searched for the treasures without success. One challenge is identifying ancient landmarks. Modern development, agricultural changes, and 2,000 years of landscape alteration make pinpointing locations from ancient directions nearly impossible. Even if directions were accurate, finding specific spots is like locating needles in enormous haystacks. Some identified locations reference the reservoir of the House of the Slit, the Queen of the South's monument, or the third terrace of the fortress. These descriptions are evocative but geographically vague. Without knowing precisely which structures or landmarks these refer to, searching is futile. If the treasures existed and remain hidden, they would be extraordinary finds. Recovering Second Temple artifacts would provide invaluable insights into Jewish worship and Roman period history. The gold and silver would be valuable materially, but their historical significance would far exceed monetary worth. Skeptics note that no contemporary references to mass temple treasure burials exist. If priests hid vast wealth before the Romans arrived, wouldn't some record survive? The silence of ancient historians on this point argues against the treasure's existence, though absence of evidence is not conclusive. The Copper Scroll remains one of the Dead Sea Scrolls' most enigmatic documents. It is unique in medium and content. Whether it is a genuine ancient treasure map or an elaborate ruse, we may never know unless someone stumbles upon the hidden caches. The scroll tantalized treasure hunters for decades, but its secrets remain locked away, either in undiscovered caches or in the realm of ancient fantasy. Nebra Sky Disc. In 1999, Metal detectorists in Germany illegally unearthed a bronze disc covered with gold symbols. The Nebra Sky Disc is 32 centimeters in diameter, weighing approximately 2 kilograms. Gold leaf applied to the bronze surface depicts celestial objects, dots representing stars, a circular disc representing the sun or full moon, a crescent representing the moon or sun, and 2 arcs along the edge possibly representing the horizon. The disc dates to approximately 1600 BCE, the Bronze Age. It is the oldest known realistic depiction of the cosmos. The arrangement of 7 small dots matches the Pleiades star cluster. This constellation was significant in many ancient cultures for agricultural timing. Other dots represent random stars or specific constellations not yet identified. The disc underwent modifications. Originally, it contained the stars, sun-moon disc, and crescent. Later, 2 horizon arcs were added along opposite edges. These arcs mark solstice, sunrise, and sunset angles for the region, indicating astronomical observation and calendrical knowledge. Even later, a boat-like arc was added at the bottom, possibly representing the solar barge, a common mythological motif. The disc's purpose is debated. Was it a teaching tool for astronomical knowledge, a religious object representing divine cosmology, or a status symbol demonstrating its owner's wealth and learning? The gold used was imported from Cornwall, England, indicating long-distance trade networks. The bronze came from Austrian copper and tin. Assembling materials from distant sources underscores the disc's value. Legal complications followed the disc's discovery. The detectorists attempted to sell it on the black market. After several years and legal actions, the disc was recovered and authenticated. Scientific analysis confirmed its age through soil residues and comparison with artifacts from the find spot. The disc is now displayed in Halle, Germany. The astronomical knowledge embedded in the disc is sophisticated. Recognizing that solstice positions could be used for calendrical purposes requires long-term observation and record-keeping. Bronze Age Europeans developed this knowledge independently, showing that complex astronomical understanding was not limited to literate civilizations like Egypt or Mesopotamia. Comparisons with Stonehenge are inevitable. Both represent Bronze Age astronomical knowledge in Northern Europe. Both required coordinated effort, resources, and specialized knowledge. The Nebra disc is portable, suggesting use by individuals or small groups rather than communal ceremonial functions like Stonehenge's possible role. The later addition of the solar barge connects the disc to mythological narratives. Many cultures conceptualized the sun traveling across the sky during the day and through the underworld at night, often by boat. Incorporating this motif suggests the disc served religious or mythological functions beyond practical astronomy. The Nebra Sky Disc challenges assumptions about Bronze Age European sophistication. Without writing, without cities, these societies possessed and valued astronomical knowledge, invested in crafting complex symbolic objects, and participated in exchange networks spanning hundreds of kilometers. They were not primitive but complex, with cultural achievements deserving recognition. Qin Shi Huang's tomb. Beneath a pyramidal mound near Xi'an, China, lies the tomb of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor who unified China in 221 BCE. The tomb complex covers approximately 60 square kilometers. The famous terracotta army, thousands of life-sized clay soldiers, horses and chariots, guards the emperor's resting place. Yet the central tomb chamber remains unexcavated. Why hasn't the tomb been opened? Several reasons exist. Chinese authorities prioritize preservation. Opening the tomb risks irreparable damage. Once exposed to air, organic materials and pigments deteriorate rapidly. The terracotta warriors, when first unearthed, bore vibrant paint that flaked off within minutes of exposure. Technology may improve future preservation capabilities, so waiting is prudent. Ancient historical accounts describe the tomb's contents. Sima Qian, writing a century after Qin Shi Huang's death, claimed the tomb contained palaces, rivers of mercury representing China's rivers, and crossbow traps to kill intruders. A ceiling depicted the heavens, the floor a map of the empire. Whether these descriptions are accurate, exaggerated, or entirely legendary is unknown. Mercury concentration in soil around the tomb is anomalously high, lending credence to accounts of mercury rivers. However, whether this indicates pools of liquid mercury inside or simply contamination from smaller mercury sources is debated. The quantities described by Sima Qian would require vast amounts of mercury, a challenging logistical feat even for a powerful empire. The tomb's construction employed hundreds of thousands of workers over decades. Labourers and craftsmen who knew the tomb's layout were supposedly executed after completion to preserve its secrets. This claim, if true, reflects the ruthless measures Qin Shi Huang employed to maintain control, even from beyond death. Ground-penetrating radar and other non-invasive techniques have surveyed the tomb complex. Anomalies suggest structures and voids within the mound, consistent with historical descriptions of palace-like chambers. However, these techniques cannot provide detailed information. Only excavation would reveal what truly lies beneath. The terracotta army itself is extraordinary. Each figure is individually modelled with unique facial features, hairstyles, and expressions. Thousands of these figures were created, along with bronze weapons, wooden chariots, and other grave goods. The scale of production indicates a highly organised manufacturing system, with workshops mass-producing components assembled into the final figures. Ongoing excavations in areas surrounding the central tomb continue revealing new pits containing acrobats, musicians, and officials, all represented by terracotta figures. The complex was designed as an underground imperial court, providing the emperor with all necessary attendants and entertainments in the afterlife. The emperor's fear of death drove much of his later reign. He sought elixirs of immortality, a quest that ironically may have poisoned him with mercury. His tomb represents an alternative approach, creating an eternal empire underground where his rule would continue forever. The decision to leave the tomb unexcavated frustrates some, but represents responsible archaeology. Ancient artifacts are irreplaceable. Once destroyed through careless excavation, they are lost forever. Future technologies will allow better preservation and analysis. Patience is appropriate. The tomb has waited over 2,000 years. It can wait longer. Derinkuyu. In Cappadocia, Turkey, a man renovating his home in 1963 discovered a hidden room behind a wall. Further exploration revealed a vast underground city extending 18 levels deep, reaching approximately 60 meters below the surface. This is Derinkuyu, one of several underground complexes in the region, carved from soft volcanic tuff. The city could accommodate approximately 20,000 people. It includes living quarters, storage rooms, stables, chapels, wineries, and ventilation shafts. The design shows sophisticated planning. Ventilation shafts provided fresh air to the deepest levels. Water wells supplied residents. Massive stone doors, rollable from inside but not outside, secured entrances against invaders. Derinkuyu dates to approximately 8th century BCE, though some portions may be older. The soft, tough rock was relatively easy to excavate with iron tools. Builders could carve chambers and tunnels methodically, removing debris through shafts. Over centuries, the complex expanded as generations added rooms and levels. Why build underground? The most likely explanation is defense. Cappadocia's location made it vulnerable to invasions. Underground cities provided refuge during attacks. Residents could retreat underground with supplies, seal the entrances, and wait out invaders. The stone doors were heavy enough that attackers could not force them open. The Hittites may have created the earliest levels, though evidence is limited. Later, early Christians fleeing Roman persecutions used and expanded the complexes. Byzantine Christians continued inhabiting them intermittently. The multi-generational use and modification make dating and attributing specific phases difficult. Multiple underground cities exist in Cappadocia. Derinkuyu is the largest discovered, but Kaymaklı, Özkonak, and others show similar features. Tunnels connect some cities, allowing inhabitants to move between locations underground. The regional network suggests coordinated planning or shared cultural practices. Living underground for extended periods would be challenging. Lack of natural light, limited space, and psychological stress would affect inhabitants. Yet the complexes provided safety when needed. For populations facing existential threats, underground refuge was preferable to surface vulnerability. The ventilation system's engineering is impressive. Shafts angled and placed strategically ensured air circulation without creating direct paths for attackers or smoke infiltration. Some shafts also served as wells, dual-purpose design maximizing functionality. The discovery of Derinkuyu and similar sites reminded modern people that significant archaeological remains can lie hidden beneath contemporary settlements. How many more undiscovered underground cities exist? Surveys using ground-penetrating radar suggest additional complexes await discovery. Derinkuyu is now a tourist attraction. Visitors descend into the depths, experiencing the claustrophobic passages and imagining ancient lives lived in darkness. The site represents human adaptability and ingenuity. Faced with threats, people created extraordinary subterranean refugees, carving entire cities from rock, living in darkness to preserve their communities. Pavlopetri. Off the southern coast of Greece, near the Laconia region, the remains of an ancient city rest beneath the sea. Pavlopetri is the oldest known submerged city, dating to approximately 3000 BCE. The site covers approximately 50,000 square meters. Visible features include building foundations, courtyards, streets, rock-cut tombs, and pottery scattered across the seabed. The city was submerged gradually through seismic activity and sea level rise over millennia. The earliest structures date to the early Bronze Age. The site was continuously occupied through the Mycenaean period around 1100 BCE, when final submersion occurred. The preservation is remarkable. Underwater environments, if stable, can preserve structures better than terrestrial sites subject to ploughing, building, and erosion. Pavlopetri's layout is visible from above water through aerial photography. Streets form a grid. Buildings cluster along these streets. The urban planning shows intentional design rather than organic growth. This level of organization in Bronze Age Greece was previously underestimated. Excavations are challenging. Underwater archaeology requires specialized equipment and training. Visibility depends on water conditions. Documenting submerged structures requires three-dimensional mapping, which was only recently made feasible through photogrammetry and sonar. The site provides insight into Bronze Age maritime culture. Pavlopetri's location near a natural harbour suggests trade was central to its economy. Pottery fragments indicate connections to Crete and other Aegean islands. The city participated in the broader network of Bronze Age Mediterranean commerce. The cause of submersion is debated. Gradual tectonic subsidence lowered the land relative to sea level. Earthquakes could have accelerated the process, causing sudden drops. Sea level rise following the last ice age contributed, though most rise occurred before the city's construction. Combination of factors over centuries ultimately submerged Pavlopetri. No written records from Pavlopetri have been found. Linear B tablets, such as those from Mycenaean palaces like Pylos and Mycenae, might have existed but would not survive underwater. Any perishable materials, including organic text or wooden structures, have long since deteriorated. The discovery of Pavlopetri changed understanding of Bronze Age Greece. Urban centres were more widespread and sophisticated than previously thought. The archaeological focus on monumental palace sites like Mycenae and Tiryns had obscured the existence of smaller coastal cities. Pavlopetri represents the ordinary, not the palatial, offering glimpses of common life in the Bronze Age. Other submerged sites exist in the Mediterranean. Herakleion, off Egypt's coast, the ancient port of Alexandria's predecessor, was discovered in 2000. Baia, a Roman dianpat. Resort town near Naples, lies underwater. Rising sea levels and geological changes have hidden much of ancient coastal life beneath the waves. Pavlopetri's future is uncertain. Climate change and rising sea levels could further submerge the site or alter currents that currently preserve it. Archaeological investigation must balance exploration with preservation. The site is fragile. Human activity, both deliberate excavation and inadvertent damage from anchors or trawling threatens the ruins. Modern technology offers new possibilities. Remote operated vehicles, underwater drones, and advanced sonar allow non-destructive survey and documentation. These tools might reveal additional details about Pavlopetri without physical excavations risks. The city beneath the waves holds secrets still, waiting for technology to advance enough to reveal them without destruction. Homo floresiensis. In 2004, archaeologists excavating Liang Bua Cave on the Indonesian island of Flores announced an extraordinary discovery. They had unearthed skeletal remains of a small-bodied hominin standing approximately 1 meter tall, with a cranial capacity of about 400 cubic centimeters, roughly 1/3 that of modern humans. This was Homo floresiensis, nicknamed the Hobbit. The fossils dated to approximately 100,000 to 60,000 years ago. This meant that a distinct human species, not Homo sapiens, survived into remarkably recent times. The discovery challenged assumptions that Homo sapiens had been the sole human species for at least 30,000 years. Homo floresiensis showed a mixture of primitive and derived features. The small brain size, body proportions, and certain skeletal characteristics resembled earlier hominins like Homo habilis or Australopithecus. Yet they used stone tools, hunted pygmy elephants native to Flores, and controlled fire. These behaviors suggested cognitive capabilities beyond what their brain size would predict. Island dwarfism offers one explanation. Species isolated on islands with limited resources often evolve smaller body sizes over generations. Elephants, hippos, and deer all show this pattern on islands worldwide. An ancestral Homo erectus population might have reached Flores and, over hundreds of thousands of years, evolved smaller size as an adaptation to the island environment. Skeptics initially questioned whether the fossils represented diseased modern human rather than a distinct species. Conditions like microcephaly, which cause small brain size, were proposed. However, the discovery of additional individuals showing similar features argues against this. A population showing consistent skeletal characteristics is more plausibly a species than multiple individuals coincidentally sharing rare pathologies. The cognitive abilities of Homo floresiensis are debated. Small brain size does not necessarily correlate directly with intelligence. Brain structure and neuron density also matter. Modern birds have small brains but demonstrate remarkable cognitive abilities. Perhaps Homo floresiensis, despite small brains, possessed neural organization enabling complex behavior. The extinction of Homo floresiensis coincides roughly with modern human arrival in the region. Did Homo sapiens contribute to their demise through competition, violence, or disease introduction? Or did environmental changes, such as volcanic eruptions that devastated Flores, cause their extinction? The timing is suggestive but not conclusive. Local folklore on Flores includes stories of small, hairy people called Ebu Gogo who lived in caves and could be taught to repeat words. These legends were collected before the Homo floresiensis discovery. Whether they represent cultural memory of actual encounters with these hominins or are coincidental folktales is unknown. Human memory rarely persists accurately over tens of thousands of years. The discovery of Homo floresiensis expanded the known diversity of human evolution. It demonstrated that human evolution was not a simple linear progression from ape-like ancestors to modern humans, but a complex bush with multiple species coexisting at various times. Many of these species are now extinct, with Homo sapiens the sole survivor. Ongoing research on Flores seeks additional fossils and archaeological sites. Understanding Homo floresiensis requires more data, more individuals, clearer archaeological contexts, and ideally, DNA. Unfortunately, tropical conditions and the fossils age make DNA extraction unlikely. The hot, humid environment degrades organic molecules, and 60,000 years approaches the limit of ancient DNA preservation even in ideal conditions. Homo floresiensis remains one of paleoanthropology's most intriguing mysteries. They represent a path not taken in human evolution, a road that led to a small-bodied, small-brained hominin species surviving until recent times in a remote island environment, then vanishing, leaving only bones and questions. Homo luzonensis. In 2019, researchers announced the discovery of another small-bodied human species, this time from Luzon Island in the Philippines. Homo luzonensis, known from teeth, hand and foot bones, and a femur, dates to approximately 67,000 years ago. Like Homo floresiensis, this species challenges understanding of human diversity in Southeast Asia during the late Pleistocene. The fossils show a unique combination of features. The teeth are small and simplified. The foot bones suggest an ability to walk upright, but retain curved features associated with climbing. The hand bones show curved finger bones, typical of tree-dwelling primates. This mosaic of traits makes Homo luzonensis difficult to place in the human family tree. How did these hominins reach Luzon? The Philippines are islands, separated from the Asian mainland by deep water channels. Even during ice ages when sea levels dropped, exposing land bridges. Elsewhere, the Philippines remained isolated. Reaching them required water crossings. Did Homo luzonensis or their ancestors possess boats or rafts? Or did they reach the island accidentally, perhaps clinging to debris after floods? The ability to construct watercraft and navigate open water was thought to be an exclusive Homo sapiens capability. Evidence of deliberate seafaring before 50,000 years ago is limited. If Homo luzonensis or their ancestors crossed water intentionally, it implies cognitive and technological capabilities beyond what their brain size would suggest. Alternatively, accidental arrival is possible. Tsunamis, storms, or river flooding could carry individuals or groups on natural rafts of vegetation. While most would perish, occasional successful accidental colonizations could establish populations on islands. Primates and other animals have colonized islands through such mechanisms. However, reaching Luzon requires crossing considerable distances, making even accidental arrival seem unlikely. The limited fossil material makes definitive conclusions difficult. Only a single individual is well represented. Are the features truly characteristic of a species, or could they reflect individual variation? Additional fossils are needed to confirm Homo luzonensis as a distinct species. The contemporaneous existence of Homo luzonensis, Homo floresiensis, Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, and Denisovans in Asia around 60,000 years ago reveals remarkable human diversity. Multiple human species occupied the region simultaneously, adapted to different environments and ecological niches. This diversity has since collapsed, with only Homo sapiens surviving. Why did Homo luzonensis go extinct? As with Homo floresiensis, modern human arrival might have played a role. Competition for resources, disease transmission, or direct conflict could have driven smaller populations to extinction. Environmental changes, volcanic eruptions, or sea level fluctuations might also have contributed. The discovery highlights how much remains unknown about human evolution in Southeast Asia. The tropical environment poorly preserves fossils. Dense jungle and complex island geography make systematic archaeological survey difficult. Many fossils and sites undoubtedly remain undiscovered. Each new find revises understanding of the region's prehistory. Homo luzonensis represents another lost branch of the human family tree. Like the Neanderthals and Denisovans, they were our relatives, sharing common ancestors but diverging evolutionarily, adapting to specific environments. Their story ended in extinction, but their existence enriches understanding of what it means to be human, showing that humanity has been diverse, with multiple forms coexisting and interacting. Paracas Skulls. In the Paracas Peninsula of Peru, archaeologists in the 1920s discovered burial sites containing skulls with elongated, unusual shapes. The Paracas. Skulls show pronounced cranial elongation, with the back of the skull stretched significantly. Some skulls have volumes larger than typical human skulls, though this is partly due to the elongation process. Artificial cranial deformation, The practice of binding infants' heads to produce elongated shapes is well documented across many cultures. Soft infant skulls can be moulded over months or years by applying pressure with boards, bindings, or other devices. The practice was common in ancient Peru among elite classes. Elongated heads may have signified status, beauty, or ethnic identity. Most Paracas skulls are clearly the result of artificial deformation. However, a few skulls show features some claim are inconsistent with binding. These include claimed differences in suture patterns, bone thickness, or skull volume. Fringe theories propose these skulls represent a distinct species, ancient hybrids, or even extraterrestrial remains. Mainstream science rejects these claims. Artificial cranial deformation accounts for all observed features, variations in technique, the age at which binding began, and individual biological variation produce diverse results. No skull characteristics fall outside the range of modified Homo sapiens skulls. DNA analysis of Paracas skulls shows human ancestry. The populations were related to other ancient Andean peoples. No anomalous genetic markers or non-human DNA sequences appear. Claims to the contrary by some researchers are either based on contaminated samples, misinterpreted results, or deliberate misrepresentation. Why did Paracas people elongate skulls? Cultural reasons vary. Elongation might signify nobility, connection to deities, or ethnic group membership. In societies where elites practice skull modification, the distinctive appearance reinforced social hierarchies visually. One could identify high-status individuals at a glance. The practice was not unique to Paracas or Peru. Elongated skulls appear in ancient Egypt, the Caucasus region, France, and elsewhere. The distribution suggests independent development of the practice in multiple cultures. The universal human tendency to modify bodies for cultural reasons produces similar outcomes in different times and places. Physical effects of cranial deformation are significant. The shape alteration is permanent. However, brain function appears unaffected. The brain adapts to the modified cranial shape, developing normally within the altered space. Individuals with bound skulls showed no signs of cognitive impairment. They functioned as full members of society, often as elites. Fringe theories surrounding Paracas skulls persist despite scientific debunking. The internet allows rapid spread of misinformation. Sensational claims attract attention, while careful scientific explanations seem boring. Alien skull theories generate clicks and views, scientific reality less so. The real story of Paracas skulls is fascinating without invoking extraterrestrials or lost species. A culture developed practices modifying human bodies in dramatic ways, creating distinctive appearances that signaled identity and status. Understanding why cultures engage in body modification, the meanings attached, and the social functions served provides insight into human cultural diversity and creativity. Cambyses' lost army. The Greek historian Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BCE, recounts the fate of a Persian army sent by King Cambyses II to attack the oracle of Amun at Siwa Oasis in Egypt around 524 BCE. 50,000 soldiers marched into the western desert. They never arrived. Herodotus reports they were engulfed by a massive sandstorm and buried beneath the dunes. No trace was ever found. Is the story true? Herodotus includes many tales of questionable accuracy. He was writing decades after the alleged event, relying on second-hand accounts. The story might be embellished, entirely fabricated, or based on misunderstood information. Yet it persists as one of history's famous mysteries. Archaeological expeditions have searched the western desert for evidence of the lost army. In 2000, Italian archaeologists claimed to have found military equipment, human remains, and bronze artifacts consistent with a Persian army of that period. The finds were in the desert between Egypt and Libya, plausibly along a route towards Siwa. However, definitive proof connecting these finds to Cambyses' specific expedition remains elusive. Sandstorms in the desert can be devastating. Modern travellers have died in severe storms. Visibility drops to zero, sand infiltrates everything, navigation becomes impossible. A large army caught unprepared in a massive storm could suffer catastrophic casualties. If scattered and disoriented, soldiers could wander until dying of thirst or exposure. The desert would eventually bury remains, leaving little trace. Alternative explanations exist. The army might have been defeated by desert tribes who then hid the evidence. Cambyses might have fabricated or allowed the sandstorm story to excuse a military failure or massacre he ordered. The expedition might never have occurred, the story being propaganda or myth. The Persian Empire was powerful, and Cambyses was a competent military leader. The decision to send a massive force across trackless desert seems strategically questionable. Siwa Oasis, while religiously significant, was not a military threat. The expedition's purpose might have been symbolic, demonstrating Persian power by attacking a revered oracle that might have spoken against Persian rule. If 50,000 soldiers truly disappeared, the demographic and military impact on Persia would have been significant. Raising and equipping such a force required substantial resources. Losing them would weaken Cambyses' position, yet historical records do not indicate any such crisis following the supposed disaster. This silence argues against the story's literal truth. The search for Cambyses' lost army continues periodically. The western desert is vast. Shifting sands bury and reveal sites over time. What is hidden today might emerge tomorrow. If remains of the army exist, they could still be found. However, identifying artifacts as definitely belonging to this specific expedition is challenging. Persian armies campaigned across North Africa multiple times. Artifacts could belong to other campaigns. The legend of the lost army captures imagination. The image of thousands of soldiers vanishing into the desert, swallowed by sand, is dramatic and eerie. It speaks to nature's power and human vulnerability. Whether the event occurred as described, or is a cautionary tale or propaganda, it has endured over 2 millennia, a mystery that may never be conclusively solved. Teotihuacán Collapse. In the basin of Mexico, near modern Mexico City, Teotihuacán rose to become one of the America's largest and most influential cities. At its peak around 500 CE, the city housed perhaps 125,000 to 200,000 people. Its monumental architecture, including the Pyramid of the Sun and Pyramid of the Moon, dominated the landscape. The city's influence extended across Mesoamerica through trade, ideology, and possibly military power. Then around 600 to 700 CE, Teotihuacán collapsed. The city was not destroyed suddenly. Instead, gradual decline occurred, population decreased, monumental construction ceased. Evidence suggests burning of elite structures, possibly indicating violent uprising or ritual termination. By 750 CE, Teotihuacán was largely abandoned, its population dispersed. What caused the collapse? No definitive answer exists. Multiple factors likely contributed. Environmental degradation is one possibility. Centuries of intensive agriculture and deforestation around the city might have depleted soils and reduced productivity. Feeding a massive urban population required vast agricultural surplus. If production declined, the city could not sustain itself. Climate change might have played a role. Evidence suggests drought periods in Mesoamerica during this time. Reduced rainfall would stress agriculture. Urban water supply could become inadequate. Food shortages would lead to social instability, migration, and urban decline. Social inequality and internal conflict are another possibility. Teotihuacán's society was stratified. Elites controlled resources and religious practices. If the elite's legitimacy eroded, perhaps due to economic hardship or military failures, internal revolt could result. Evidence of burning in elite residential areas supports this theory. Commoners might have risen against rulers, torching their compounds. External threats could have contributed. Competition from rival cities, disruption of trade networks, or military defeat might have weakened Teotihuacán. The city had been dominant for centuries. Other regions might have resented this dominance and seized opportunities to break free or attack when Teotihuacán showed weakness. Epidemic disease is another potential factor. No direct evidence exists, but infectious diseases could devastate pre-modern populations. If epidemics struck Teotihuacán, population loss could trigger economic and social collapse. Disease combined with other stressors might create a crisis the city could not recover from. The lack of written records from Teotihuacán limits understanding. Without text explaining events, archaeologists rely on material remains, which are ambiguous. Burned buildings indicate violence but don't reveal who burned them or why. Declining artifact quality suggests economic problems but doesn't explain causes. After Teotihuacán's collapse, no single successor emerged. Power dispersed across smaller regional centers. The classic Maya continued flourishing for another 2 centuries. Epiclassic cultures in central Mexico rose but remained smaller than Teotihuacán. Mesoamerica entered a period of political fragmentation. Teotihuacán's legacy persisted. Later cultures, including the Aztecs, revered the ruins. Aztec myths claimed Teotihuacán was where the gods created the current world. The Aztecs conducted pilgrimages and ceremonies at the abandoned city. They believed the massive pyramids were built by gods or giants, unable to conceive humans creating such monuments. The mystery of Teotihuacán's collapse illustrates the fragility of complex societies. Even powerful, long-lasting civilizations can fall. Understanding why helps illuminate factors that make societies vulnerable. Environmental sustainability, social equity, adaptability to change all influence civilization survival. Teotihuacán's failure, whatever its causes, offers lessons about human society's challenges across history. Classic Maya collapse. The Maya civilization of southern Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras reached extraordinary heights during the Classic period, approximately 250 to 900 CE. Dozens of city-states built elaborate stone temples and palaces. They developed sophisticated writing, mathematics, and astronomy. Populations were dense, agriculture intensive. Then in the 9th century, Maya civilization in the southern lowlands collapsed. Cities were abandoned. Monumental construction ceased. Population plummeted. The collapse was not uniform. Some cities declined earlier, others later. Northern Yucatan cities continued for centuries, but the heartland of classic Maya civilization emptied. By 1000 CE, jungle reclaimed once thriving cities. Multiple theories attempt to explain the collapse. Drought is a leading candidate. Paleoclimatic evidence from lake sediments and cave formations indicates severe, prolonged droughts between approximately 800 and 900 CE. Reduced rainfall would devastate agriculture dependent on seasonal rains. Crop failures would lead to famine, social unrest, and collapse of political authority. Deforestation and soil erosion compounded agricultural vulnerability. Centuries of intensive farming depleted soils. Clearing forests for farmland and construction timber reduced tree cover, affecting local rainfall patterns and increasing erosion. Environmental degradation made the system increasingly fragile. When drought struck, the degraded landscape could not sustain populations. Warfare intensified in the terminal Classic period. Inscriptions record increased conflict between city-states. Defensive walls appeared at some sites. Conflict disrupts agriculture, trade, and social cohesion. If drought strained resources, competition for them might have sparked warfare, creating a feedback loop where environmental stress and violence reinforced each other. Social inequality might have exacerbated crises. Maya society was hierarchical. Elites controlled resources and religious knowledge. Commoners bore labor burdens. If elite legitimacy depended on success and prosperity, failures like drought and military defeat could undermine authority. Commoners might have abandoned cities, refusing to support elites who no longer delivered stability and abundance. Disease is another potential factor. Epidemics could devastate populations. While no direct evidence exists, the stressed, malnourished populations resulting from drought and warfare would be vulnerable to infectious disease. Epidemics combined with other factors could accelerate collapse. The collapse was not apocalyptic. Maya people did not disappear. Populations migrated, consolidated in areas that remained viable, or shifted to less centralized societal organization. Northern Maya cities like Chichen Itza and Uxmal flourished after the southern lowlands collapsed. Maya culture continued, transformed, but not destroyed. Colonial-era Spanish encountered Maya societies that were descendants of classic civilization. Modern Maya people, numbering millions, maintain cultural continuity. The collapse was of a specific political and social system, not of the Maya people or culture. Understanding the classic Maya collapse requires integrating multiple factors. Single cause explanations are inadequate. Drought alone would not cause collapse in a healthy, adaptable society. But drought plus environmental degradation, plus social inequality, plus warfare, plus disease could create a perfect storm, overwhelming societal resilience. The Maya collapse serves as a cautionary tale. Complex societies can fail when multiple stressors converge. Environmental sustainability, social cohesion, and adaptability determine whether societies withstand crises or collapse. The abandoned cities, swallowed by jungle, stand as monuments to civilization's impermanence and the importance of maintaining balance between human societies and their environments. Nazca Lines. In the Peruvian desert, lines drawn across the landscape form vast figures visible only from the air. The Nazca Lines consist of geoglyphs created by the Nazca culture between approximately 500 BCE and 500 CE. They removed reddish pebbles covering the desert surface, exposing lighter soil beneath. The arid climate preserved the lines for centuries. The designs range from simple straight lines extending for kilometers to complex figures. A spider, a hummingbird, a monkey, a whale, and many others. Some figures are hundreds of meters across. They were created by carefully removing surface stones along planned paths. The scale required coordination and planning. Workers must have followed designs laid out in miniature or described verbally. The purpose of the Nazca Lines is debated. Religious or ceremonial functions are likely. The figures might represent deities, totems, or mythological beings important in Nazca beliefs. Walking the lines could have been a ritual act, a form of pilgrimage or prayer. Some lines align with water sources or astronomical features, suggesting connections to water worship or celestial observations. The lines related to water is a compelling theory. The Nazca region is extremely arid. Water was precious, survival depending on irrigation and underground aquifers. Many lines point toward water sources. Rituals conducted along the lines might have been prayers for rain or offerings to water deities. The figures could symbolize fertility, growth, and life sustained by water. Astronomical alignments exist for some lines. Certain geoglyphs align with solstices, equinoxes, or rising points of bright stars. The Nazca might have used the lines as a giant astronomical calendar, marking significant celestial events related to agricultural cycles. However, not all lines show clear astronomical significance, suggesting multiple purposes. Some researchers propose the lines functioned as pathways during processions. Walking meditative paths while praying or chanting is common across cultures. The scale of Nazca Lines would accommodate large processions. The visibility from surrounding hills means observers could watch processions, reinforcing communal participation in rituals. The question of why create figures visible only from the air intrigues. The Nazca had no aircraft. They could not view their work from above as we can, yet they created it. One explanation is that the figures were intended for deities or spirits who could view them from the sky. By creating art for divine audiences, the Nazca expressed devotion. Alternatively, the Nazca might have viewed the figures from surrounding hills, which offer elevated perspectives. While not directly overhead, hillside vantage points allow appreciation of the design's scale and form. The figures served their purpose when viewed from these accessible locations, not requiring aerial perspective. Preservation of the Nazca Lines is remarkable. The desert's extreme aridity, minimal rainfall, and lack of vegetation prevent erosion. Winds are light enough not to redistribute surface stones. These specific environmental conditions allowed the lines to survive intact. In other climates, they would have erased within decades. Modern threats include vehicular traffic and development. Roads and construction can damage lines. Tourism, if unmanaged, poses risks. UNESCO World Heritage designation provides protection, but vigilance is required. Preserving the lines for future generations means restricting access and educating the public about their fragility and significance. Theories attributing the lines to extraterrestrials or lost advanced civilizations are baseless. The Nazca people, using simple technology and careful planning, created the lines. Their achievement demonstrates human capability and cultural sophistication, not mysterious outside intervention. The lines stand as testament to the Nazca's vision, organization, and devotion to their beliefs. Chanquilo. In Peru's Casma Sechin Valley, an ancient complex known as Chanquilo consists of 13 stone towers running along a ridge. These towers, built approximately 2,300 years ago, form a solar calendar. Observers positioned at specific locations could track the sun's position as it rose or set behind the towers throughout the year. The spacing and alignment of towers mark solstices, equinoxes, and intermediary dates. Chanquilo represents one of the earliest known solar observatories in the Americas. The sophistication demonstrates advanced astronomical knowledge. The Chanquilo builders understood the sun's annual path and encoded this understanding in architecture. Why create such an observatory? Agricultural timing is one explanation. Knowing precise dates for planting and harvesting maximizes crop yields. Seasonal variations in this coastal desert region meant agriculture relied on precise timing of river floods and rainfall patterns. A solar calendar helped predict these events, improving food security. Religious and ceremonial motivations are also plausible. Many cultures view celestial bodies as deities or divine messengers. Tracking the sun's movements might have been a sacred duty. Ceremonies conducted at specific solar positions could mark important religious festivals. The towers themselves might have been sacred structures, not merely functional. The observatory's use required trained individuals interpreting observations. Astronomer priests might have held this role, their knowledge giving them power and status. Controlling the calendar meant controlling agricultural timing and religious festivals, central aspects of social life. This knowledge-based power could support hierarchical social structures. Chanquilo includes other structures, a fortified complex, plazas, and rooms. Whether the site was purely ceremonial or also served political and residential functions is debated. The fortifications suggest conflict or fear of attack, though whether related to the observatory function is unclear. The decline and abandonment of Chanquilo around 1,800 years ago coincides with broader regional changes. Environmental shifts, political upheaval, or the rise of competing centres might have led to the site's decommissioning. Knowledge of its precise use was lost, though the towers remained visible. Rediscovery of Chanquilo's astronomical function occurred only in the 21st century. Researchers noticed the towers' alignment and realised their calendrical purpose. This recent recognition highlights how archaeological sites can hold undiscovered meaning. Features visible for centuries might remain misunderstood until new analytical approaches reveal their functions. Other ancient solar observatories exist: Stonehenge, Chichen Itza's El Castillo, Newgrange in Ireland. The global distribution suggests independent development of astronomical observation and calendrical systems. Human societies worldwide recognized the importance of celestial cycles and created monuments encoding this knowledge. Chanquilo's preservation is good but not perfect. Erosion and human activity have damaged some towers. Protecting the site requires balancing research access with preservation. The dry climate helps, but active conservation efforts ensure the observatory survives for future study. The sophistication of Chanquilo challenges assumptions about ancient South American societies. Well before the Inca Empire, cultures possessed advanced astronomical knowledge and engineering capabilities. They built monuments serving complex functions, integrating practical and religious purposes. Chanquilo stands as evidence of this intellectual and cultural sophistication. Nabta Playa. In Egypt's Nubian desert, approximately 1,000 kilometers south of Cairo and 100 kilometers west of the Nile, lies Nabta Playa. This ancient site features stone circles, alignments, and megalithic structures dating to approximately 7,000 years ago. It represents one of the world's earliest known archaeoastronomical sites, predating Stonehenge by over 1,000 years. During the Neolithic period, Nabta Playa was a seasonal lakebed. During wet seasons, the playa filled with water, attracting human groups and animals. Pastoralist peoples gathered there, grazing herds and conducting ceremonies. As the climate dried around 5,000 years ago, the lake disappeared and the site was abandoned. The stone circles and alignments suggest astronomical observations. Some alignments correspond to cardinal directions, others align with celestial features like the summer solstice sunrise or specific star risings. The precision implies deliberate astronomical intent. One structure, a calendar circle, consists of upright stones arranged to mark specific solar positions. This could have functioned as a seasonal calendar, helping inhabitants predict when the playa would fill with water. Such knowledge was crucial for pastoralists planning movements. Megalithic structures include arrangements of large stones, some weighing several tons. How these were transported and erected by mobile pastoralist groups is unclear. The effort required indicates the site's importance. Gatherings at Nabta Playa might have involved multiple groups, combining labour for construction while conducting social and religious activities. Burials at the site include cattle remains. Cattle held symbolic significance, possibly representing wealth, prestige, or religious importance. Burials of cattle alongside humans or separately in dedicated sites suggest ritual treatment. The emergence of cattle-focused symbolism at Nabta Playa might connect to later Egyptian religious beliefs, where cattle and bovine deities played roles. The relationship between Nabta Playa and later Egyptian civilization is speculative. Did the peoples of Nabta Playa migrate eastward to the Nile as the desert dried, contributing to Egyptian culture's development? Some researchers propose connections, but direct evidence is lacking. The abandonment of Nabta Playa around 5,000 years ago predates Egypt's unification by centuries. Any cultural continuity would have to bridge this gap. Nabta Playa's astronomical features demonstrate sophisticated knowledge among Neolithic pastoralists. These were not simple nomads but organised societies with complex beliefs and technical capabilities. The ability to create astronomical alignments required multi-generational observation, record-keeping, and knowledge transmission. The site's remote location and harsh environment limited modern research. Only in recent decades has systematic investigation occurred. Each research season reveals new features, expanding understanding of the site's complexity. However, preserving Nabta Playa is challenging. Erosion, occasional floods, and human visitors all threaten the stones. Nabta Playa adds to evidence that complex societies developed in Africa long before pharaonic Egypt. Pastoralist cultures of the Sahara during its greener periods achieved social and intellectual sophistication reflected in monumental constructions. As the desert dried, these populations likely migrated to more hospitable regions, possibly influencing later cultures. The stone circles stand weathered and alone, surrounded by endless desert. They are silent witnesses to a time when water filled the playa, when people gathered under the stars, observing celestial movements and marking them in stone. What beliefs motivated this effort? What ceremonies occurred here remains largely unknown. Nabta Playa holds its secrets tightly, yielding them slowly to patient research. Easter Island, Moai. Across Easter Island, nearly 900 monolithic statues stand or lie fallen. These are the Moai, carved by the Rapa Nui people between approximately 1000 and 1600 CE. The statues represent ancestral figures, their backs to the sea, watching over the island's communities. The largest erected Moai stands 10 meters tall and weighs approximately 82 tons. Carving the Moai required significant labor. They were carved from volcanic tuff at the Rano Raraku quarry. Workers used stone hand tools to shape the figures. The carving process involved defining the statue's form while it remained attached to bedrock, then undercutting and detaching it. Many Moai remain in the quarry, unfinished or awaiting transport. Transporting Moai from quarry to coastal platforms, often several kilometers, is the central mystery. Theories abound. Early researchers proposed the statues were dragged horizontally on sledges. This requires enormous labour and risk damage. Experiments showed hundreds of people pulling ropes could move moai this way, but the effort is tremendous. A competing theory suggests the statues were walked upright. Ropes attached to the statue's head allowed teams on either side to rock it forward, shifting weight from side to side while moving it ahead. Experiments demonstrated this method works, requiring fewer people and potentially explaining why statues arrived at platforms without significant base wear from dragging. The Rapa Nui's oral traditions, recorded after European contact, mention that the moai walked. Whether this is literal description of the transport method or metaphorical language is debated. However, it aligns with the walking theory, lending it cultural support. Once at platforms called ahu, moai were erected upright. How this was accomplished with primitive technology is another puzzle. Ramps of earth and stone might have been built, allowing workers to lever statues upright. Alternatively, progressive levering combined with stone packing could raise statues incrementally. The exact method remains unclear. Originally, moai had white coral eyes inserted after erection. This final act opened the statue's eyes, activating its spiritual power. The eyes allowed the moai to watch over and protect the community. Most eyes were lost or destroyed, but a few have been found, allowing reconstruction of the statue's original appearance. The moai construction and erection occurred during a period of social and environmental stress on Easter Island. Deforestation, caused by agriculture, construction, and possibly introduced rats eating tree seeds, eliminated the island's forests. Without trees, canoes could not be built, limiting fishing. Soil erosion reduced agricultural productivity. Resource depletion created competition and conflict. Around 1700 CE, moai production ceased. Many statues were toppled during internal conflicts. Rapa Nui society reorganized, abandoning the cult of the moai for the Birdman cult, which involved different rituals and power structures. The population declined, possibly due to environmental collapse, warfare, and later, devastating European contact introducing disease and slavery. The toppled moai lay scattered across the island for centuries. Modern restoration projects, beginning in the mid-20th century, re-erected many statues. Tourists now visit Easter Island to see these enigmatic figures standing once more, gazing inland as they did centuries ago. The moai represent human ambition, ingenuity, and perhaps hubris. A small population on a remote island invested enormous resources in religious monuments. The effort contributed to environmental degradation that undermined their society. The statues stand as warnings of the consequences when resource use exceeds sustainability. Yet they also demonstrate human creativity and cultural expression, the drive to create meaning and beauty, even at great cost. Shigir Idol. In a peat bog in Russia's Ural Mountains, gold prospectors in 1894 discovered wooden artifacts, including a large carved figure. The Shigir Idol, as it became known, is carved from a single piece of larch wood. It stands approximately 5 meters tall, though originally may have been even taller. The entire surface is covered with geometric and symbolic carvings, zigzags, lines, and stylized faces. Radiocarbon dating places the idol's creation around 11,000 years ago, making it far older than Stonehenge, the Egyptian pyramids, or any other known monumental wooden sculpture. It dates to the early Mesolithic period, created by hunter-gatherers at the end of the last ice age. The carvings on the idol are complex. Multiple faces appear at different heights. Geometric patterns cover the body. These are not random decorations, but deliberate symbols. The meanings are lost. Were the faces deities, ancestors, spirits? Do the geometric patterns encode information, narratives, or purely aesthetic designs? Preservation of wood for 11,000 years is extraordinary. The waterlogged, anaerobic peat bog environment prevented decay. Without oxygen, bacteria and fungi that decompose wood could not survive. When the idol was removed from the bog, it began deteriorating. Conservation efforts stabilized it, but the idol remains fragile. The Shigir Idol demonstrates that Mesolithic peoples possess sophisticated artistic and symbolic capabilities. Hunter-gatherers were not simply surviving, but creating complex cultural expressions. The time and skill invested in carving the idol indicate it held significant importance, likely religious or communal. Comparisons with other ancient wood carvings are limited because wood rarely survives. The Shigir Idol is an exception, preserved by unique environmental conditions. Most wooden artifacts from this period are lost. What survives represents a tiny fraction of what once existed. The idol hints at a broader tradition of wood carving that has vanished. The discovery's significance was not fully appreciated initially. The idol was displayed in a museum, but regarded as a curiosity. Only with modern radiocarbon dating was its true age revealed. This recognition came over a century after its discovery, reminding us that archaeological objects can remain unappreciated until new methods reveal their importance. The idol's context is partially understood. The peat bog, where it was found, contained other artifacts, bone tools, pottery fragments. These indicate the site was used by hunter-gatherer groups over extended periods. Whether the idol was a cult statue at a sacred site or had other functions is unknown. Attempts to interpret the carvings often involve comparing them to ethnographic examples from Siberian or Uralic peoples. Some symbols resemble motifs used by these cultures in historically recent times. If cultural continuity exists over millennia, these comparisons might provide insights. However, assuming continuity over 11,000 years is risky. Meanings can shift dramatically over shorter periods. The Shigir Idol stands as one of humanity's oldest surviving works of art. It challenges assumptions that monumental art and complex symbolism emerged only with agriculture and sedentary societies. Hunter-gatherers created and valued such expressions long before farming began. The idol represents a worldview, a religious system, a community's identity, all preserved against odds in a Ural bog, waiting 11 millennia to tell its story to people who can no longer fully understand it.